Hello everybody. Welcome to Navigo's 2023 AGM. My name is Jane Lewington and I have the privilege of being chair of Navigo. It's great to be back at the auditorium. So if you can come through and take a seat as quickly as you can so that I can get the welcome and introductions done and we can get into our first seminar. I just need to make a couple of health and safety announcements. There is no planned fire drill today, so if you hear the fire alarm, please make your way outside the building as quickly and as calmly as you can, using the designated fire exits, and the assembly point is in the car park. As per usual, lunch will be served upstairs, and we've allowed 2 hours this year for the lunch break, plenty of time for you to get your refreshments. Our staff and members have worked really hard putting together today's programme, ensuring that we all have a wonderful day. This year, the AGM has a strong focus on children and young people, reflecting our role now as a provider of all-age mental health services. We hope that you really enjoy and take a lot away from today's discussions about the current challenges facing mental health services, and in particular, the challenges facing our children and young people. As soon as I've finished speaking, you will get the chance to hear young people discuss the issues facing them and facing children and young people services in debate with members of the Navigo executive team. At our AGM this afternoon, you'll hear Simon talking about everything that Navigo has been doing over the last year, and we're really excited to welcome this year's special guest, TV and radio presenter, Katie Thistleton, to the AGM. This year, our elected staff and community representatives have taken the lead in organising today's awards, with the winners of the 5 award categories being announced this afternoon. For the first time of many today, I'm going to encourage you to vote on the project of the year. We have 3 entries this year competing for your vote, and we've gone back to the old-fashioned way of voting, so you should all have received a token as you came in. Just place it in the tube that you want to select out in the front foyer, with a major reveal of the winner at the end of the AGM. The 3 entries this year are My Menopause Matters, setting up a menopause support group accessible to service users and staff; Rise, a step-down programme for children and young people reaching the end of their therapeutic journey with our CAM service; and Under Our Umbrella, focusing on creating more inclusive, neurodiverse workplaces. The Gardner Hill Foundation, our local mental health charity, are here once again this year in the front foyer, where you can also buy tickets to enter this year's raffle. And if you are a member of Navigo or Nurtrio staff, can I encourage you to get your flu jab today? The occupational health team are here ready to jab. We hope you get a chance to talk to colleagues manning the wonderful display boards, that you get the chance to meet and catch up with colleagues and friends, and that you truly enjoy our Navigo Family Day. Just to say that during the seminar, we will keep the marketplace closed, but it will reopen over the 2-hour lunch break. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Amy Quickfall. Amy is our Children and Young People's co-production and engagement lead, and she's going to introduce the panel members and the panel discussion, which is a child and adolescent mental health services conversation with Navigo on becoming an all-age provider. So, Amy, come on down.
So, good morning and welcome. 2023 AGM, here we go. So, as you know, around 6 years ago, Navigo recognised that young people's voices needed to be amplified across the organisation. Navigo embarked on a journey of creating a youth forum called Nexus and engaging and working with the local community and organisations. Along the way, we have worked with national organisations such as Off the Record, Now and Beyond and Think to Speak, and local partners such as Compass Go, Lifestyle, Humberside Police, Young Carers, Grimsby Institute and Franklin, to name a few. At the time, Navigo wasn't commissioned to provide young people services. I've been very lucky to have the support of my line manager, Julie Gray, and the senior team that are on the stage today. They have allowed me to move Navigo along this journey to where we are now, an all-age provider. Navigo can now truly think family and approach services in a holistic way. Now that Navigo is an all-age provider, it enables us to work with more agencies and more organisations to ensure the voice of young people is captured, and to also ensure that when we develop services and project work, young people are really part of that. The young adults today on the stage have been part of a wider movement across the Integrated Care Board and the Integrated Care System. They have been part of conversations with senior leaders, influencing policies and helping to deliver North East Lincolnshire's Mental Health Action Plan. I have seen their confidence grow, friendships made and positive changes starting to happen. I am truly proud. It gives me great pleasure to hand the seminar over to Pippa Curtin. Pippa has been instrumental to me in my learning around children and young people and how to ensure their experiences and voices are valued across our organisation. I'm delighted that Pippa is chairing the panel today. Thank you, Pippa.
Thanks, Amy. So, as Amy said, my name is Pippa Curtin. I'm the Voice and Influence Coordinator in Children's Services, North East Lincolnshire Council. I'm really proud and privileged to be here today because I'm really passionate about young people's voice and particularly their power to change and influence positive change for themselves and for others. And recently, over recent years, young people's voice has absolutely talked about the priority for them around mental health. Access to services, challenging stereotypes, and much, much more about making our services really accessible for them. And they've been integral through a number of different projects. Over the last 8 years, mental health's been in the top voted for category from young people when they vote on an annual consultation. So thousands of our 11 to 18-year-olds tell us that it was the most important issue, one of the most important issues for them. And consistently over the last few years, it's been 1 in 5 young people have said that that's the top issue out of 10 that are most important to them. So it's not something that's just happened, and it's really important that we engage and involve young people's voice throughout. So there's been a number of things over the years. Amy mentioned Nexus that was set up to engage young people. We developed a young inspectors programme and linked young people into the strategic planning, and of course the panel today. So I'm going to hand over to the panel now and ask them to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start on my left, and I'd like everybody to say their name, their pronouns, what you have to do with Navigo, and why you're on the panel today.
Hi, my name's Adam Gregory. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm just happy to be with Navigo and help improve future services.
Thanks, Adam.
Morning everyone. I'm Simon Beaton. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Chief Exec at Navigo. I'm on the panel today because I really want to have this discussion with young people, and I want that to be broadcast to as many people as we can.
Hello, I'm Jesse Black. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a service user, and I'm on the panel today because I'm passionate about improving young people's mental health services.
My name's Anita Bird. Pronouns are she, her. I'm the Assistant Director for Young Minds Matter, and I'm on the panel today to talk about Young Minds Matter and how it's been changing since coming into Navigo.
I'm Robin. Pronouns are he, him. I'm a member of the inclusion group, and I'm on the panel because I want to use my past experiences to help improve Navigo going forward.
Hi, my name's Mike Reeve. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of Navigo, and I have the job card for leading, hopefully, the successful transition to transformation of Young Minds Matters into the Navigo family.
Hello, I'm Kieran, I use he, him pronouns. I go to the inclusion LGBT group and I volunteer at Navigo, and I'm here because I'm passionate around mental health and LGBTQ+ issues, and I want to share my experiences.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Amir Sajjad. My pronouns are he or him. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Since we became all-age services in April, I think it's the first opportunity just had with the users of our children's services. So I'm really looking forward to having some meaningful discussion and some outcomes today.
Thanks everyone. So just before we make a start, I just wanted to mention that if anything that's discussed on the panel today or throughout the day, if it triggers anybody and they need some extra help or support, please use the doors to the left and some members of staff will support you in a quiet room area. So please feel free to seek that out if you need to. It's been mentioned in the introductions that Navigo is now an all-age service, and the young adults on the panel wanted to discuss with senior leaders how continual improvements are going to be made and how they will ensure it. And Navigo delivers services that we would be happy for our own family to use. So the first question is going to be posed by Robin.
Why did Navigo want to become an all-age mental health service provider?
And I think Simon,
yeah, I'll pick that one up. Yeah, thanks, Robin. I think obviously Navigo's been in existence now since April 2011, and when we spun out of the NHS, we brought with us adult services and older adult services. And we did have a crack at taking on children's services a couple of times during that decade, but they stayed, quite rightly at that time, they stayed with Lincolnshire Partnership. I think what we started to recognise as we went through that decade, if you like, the first decade of being Navigo, was that we were often in our adult services, we were picking up people that had been through children's services, and we were sort of challenging ourselves on that in terms of, has this been the right support for these people? Why are they coming to adult services, presenting in the way that they are? And so we've always had that ambition, and I think Amy mentioned at the start, around to be able to think family and think holistically. We talk as an organisation about services that we're happy for your family to use. We also talk about those principles around providing people somewhere to live, somewhere to work, and someone to love. And we wanted to bring that ethos, if you like, right across children's services as well, in terms of how do we support people to live that sort of fully rounded life, not just be a specialist provider of mental health services when people become really poorly and need that support, but actually embed ourselves in the sort of fabric of the lives of children and young people to start to see that sort of sense of sort of vocation and an ability to live with mental health difficulties and work their way through that. So we're really passionate about, we worked positively with Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust when they were the provider, but that's not quite the same as having children's services in the same organisation embedded with the way that adult services work. I was speaking to Kofi Smiles this morning on the radio about, he said, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do with services? And I think our passion and my passion is around that transition phase between children that are sort of 14 right through to 25, and the disconnect between services there that often come at 18 years old, when you hear those horror stories about children at 18 years old having a significant support from either social care or wherever that is, up to their 18th birthday, and on their 18th birthday that just simply stops and they're expected to become adults at the flick of a switch. With children and adult services based in the same organisation, hopefully us being able to manage that transition a lot more effectively with people and keep that care and support in place for as long as it needs to be, so that children transitioning into adulthood can start to live really fulfilling lives and not feel that sense of loss of what they had when they were children into adulthood. You know, and so there's so much we can do. There's so much I think we can do connecting the children and adult services together. Hence why it was such a passion for us to get that sort of under the Navigo roof, if you like, so we can manage that whole pathway. And I'll stop rambling now.
Thanks. Mike, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so we started the journey about hopefully taking over children's services a couple of years ago, and it's one of those areas that, as Simon just alludes to, we've always wanted to do. We've always felt there's a good opportunity, and to make an all-age mental health service gives so much opportunities regarding doing transformational work. This is the projects that really give that real extra buzz to the way that we work and for the people that use our service, and making sure that the voice of the service users of all ages are heard. So that was one of the major fundamental bits of excitement that we had. It's an area that, you know, when we do our day job, you think, oh no, not something else. But the more we thought about it, the more we felt this is completely the right thing to do. And it's allowing us to start to look at all different areas of childhood mental health, which if we don't deal with, becomes adult mental health problems and long-term mental health problems. And we see major challenges around that, but challenges that we want to work with people on this panel and people in the audience and other people to really make a difference for, because there's certain caveats that Simon alludes to in his presentation that we want to ensure is embedded in all the people that we come to serve. For example, we want to make sure that the voice of the people that use our service is heard. We want to make sure that, for example, we're not sending lots and lots of children at the most important time of their life to faraway places all across Europe, and I said that deliberately because we're aware of even going further afield than just England on some occasions. That to us is something that we really want to address. We want to address all age in its full mighty position, from neurodiversity problems, from eating disorder problems, from crisis, from emotional compared to mental health problems, all the challenges that the previous Young Minds Matters we're faced with. We're absolutely determined that at times we may end up falling out with colleagues from other organisations, and hopefully we're falling out with them for the right reason, because we've determined that taking over Young Minds Matter is going to be something positive for the people that use our service both now and in the future. And we do intend to lobby, and we hope people on this room will help and support us to ensure that the North East Lincolnshire Children's Services are at the top of their game and the best in the UK, which we always envisage with our adult services. So, you know, that's our #1 priority going forward.
Thanks both of you. Yeah, so hopefully that Navigo is an all-age provider now. That should see a smoother transition maybe from child and adolescent mental health services into adult mental health services. And because we know that becoming an adult is a scary enough process as it is, and that children and young people, as they transition into adulthood, face all kinds of different difficult decisions and life-changing situations, and it's really important that we've got the right support in place and throughout that transitional process and beyond it, and making it as easy a process as possible to get the right support at the right time. So I'm going to hand over to Jesse now, who's going to ask the next question.
So my question is, how does Navigo make it more comfortable for young adults who are struggling with the transition from child and adolescent mental health services to adult mental health services to help prevent disengagement and make sure that these people continue receiving the help that they need?
I'm going to hand that to Anita first, if that's all right.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, I've been reflecting quite a bit on transitions, especially as the service has moved from one organisation to another. And actually, it's really hard. It's really quite hard to learn new things and to know who to speak to. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to do is to strengthen our links with the adult teams. So we've been having lots of conversations with our colleagues, because when we know who they are and we're working with a young person, we can make that so much easier then. So that's really important for us to keep those links going. We know there's a policy for transition, and we'd really like to invite young people to help us shape that, because that needs changing now. We're in a new environment and we want to make that different. And part of that as well, we'd like to think about peer support in amongst that. Robin, you've already helped us already, haven't you, with coming and interviewing, and we'd really like to see that happen a lot more. And not only that, we'd probably like to look at some some support groups that help people through that transition process. So there's lots of exciting things that we're really hoping to do.
Thanks, Anita. Ray, do you want to add anything to that?
I think, yeah, most of that is nicely covered by Anita, but I think what we need to, I mean, from my clinical side of experience, I have seen how the age plays a kind of factor in terms of service provision. It's a very common knowledge, and myself, Mike, we used to work on the front line. We did have people just brought to us because they just turned 18, and that 18 was a cut-off that whichever was service provided, especially it was more to do with inpatient provision somewhere, they'll be just brought back and now you're adult and need to be taken over. Adult services are quite different to children's services because adult services are more about inclusion, trying to get you back into more meaningful life, back to education kind of thing. So it's a massively different to what people are used to of when they are in the children's services. So I think that transition, we've been talking about transition quite a bit, does not need to happen urgently or just abruptly. It has to be a very slow process. People need to be prepared for that, and I think this would be one of the main thing that we are trying to achieve, that in all age services we need to start preparing people if they need to stay in the mental health services, which is not the ambition, because we really want people to be back to their normal living and they should just be getting the services when they need it. But that transition should come at an ease and they should understand where they're signing up to that. So I think that is something which definitely we are working on, and we will continue to work on that.
Thanks a lot. There's been lots of discussion over the years and recently around crisis and what that means and what a crisis service might look like and how people can contact that service. And by its very nature, crisis means that we often need somebody else to notice that and to help support us access that. It's a really tough job to be able to do that well. So throughout the engagement events that have been happening over the summer, this is a topic that young people wanted to bring forward and talk about what crisis services are there and how they work. So Kieran's previously lived in Liverpool and is going to share a little bit about a service that's in Liverpool and tell you a little bit about that before we go on to the next comment.
Yeah, thank you. I lived in Liverpool for a year a few years ago, and I accessed a crisis support service there. And for me, what a crisis is might be different to everyone else in this room. And I think it's important to note that, what a crisis is to you might be different to the person sitting next to you. And so I think it's important that services don't define what a crisis is. I think it should be up to the young person or the person accessing the service to define what a crisis is to them. So when I was in Liverpool, the service that I used offered like an all-day service where you could speak to someone. I know we have safe space, but I feel like the difference with what I accessed was it was more of you didn't have to be in that crisis to access that support. It could be before a crisis to stop you reaching that point. And I think it's really important that those services offer something for young people before they get to a crisis. And yeah, I'd just like to kind of highlight my own experiences and say how important that was to me, to be able to get someone to speak to before I reached that point. And it would be really good if Navigo could implement something like that here for young people. I know the one I accessed was from ages 10 to 25, and children and young people could come in without a referral and they could just speak to someone. And I think it was a fantastic idea. So yeah, I'd like to ask if you could maybe look at developing an alternative to crisis for children and young people.
Mike, do you want to take that one first?
The answer is yes. When we took Young Minds Matter contract on behind the scenes, myself and some of my colleagues were working around getting investment in a crisis alternative. If you're in crisis at the minute in North East Lincolnshire and you're under 18, you have to go to accident and emergency. Well, we completely, unconscious colleagues from NLAG on this over here today, we completely disagree with that concept that the only place you should go to for your mental health problems is to an urgent A&E department. It's completely the wrong environment. Sadly, that's a national model which we've been fighting against for many years in the world of adults, and we're making headway on that. So we can announce that we were successful of getting a grant for 350, it may even be £360,000 now, to look at an alternative. So what we want to do in response to that is work with hopefully people like yourself, Kieran, and other reps to look at what that will look like, because we do need to use accident emergency, sadly, when any people may, for example, have harmed themselves. So we don't want to not use A&E, but if someone is in a mental health crisis and they just want someone to talk to, we would need to work with the Young Minds Matter teams, with people, the users and the carers and the families, to say, well, let's put things in place before it escalates up to the stage that they do self-harm. So we want to utilise that money effectively. We have our ideas, but I even wrote it down. There you go. As we were talking, we must involve people like yourself to ensure that we do something a lot more radical and a lot more to help and support children and adults, obviously, at that stage of distress in their life.
Simon, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, I think I'd love to go and visit the Liverpool site for a start, to see what they're doing and see what they're doing really well. I'm assuming it's run by Mersey Carers in Liverpool, so you've written that down as well.
I was looking for cards you just give to care and all this stuff.
Yeah, I think we need to go and see what is possible. I think if you look across our adult services, we've got a history as an organisation of doing things like that. So we've now got an older adults crisis safe space. We've got crisis safe space within Navigo House already, and that's probably not necessarily the right fit for children's services, but absolutely we recognise the fact that doing that pre-crisis work or supporting people when they might not be in a mental health crisis, but it is a crisis, like you say. Everybody's version of crisis is their own version of crisis. It makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense to do it because you're supporting the young people at the right point when they need the help, but it makes absolute sense from a selfish point of view. So our crisis clinicians and our crisis services don't become overwhelmed with what actually isn't a mental health crisis. People need support. When they need support, we need to be there to give them that support. We've got things, again, in the marketplace today around what's happened with One Front Door. Just had a long conversation with Molly B and things that are going on within primary care and the primary care practitioners. It's about supporting people in the way that they need supporting when they need supporting, because if we don't, they'll end up in crisis anyway. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy from that point of view. We need to make sure that we've got the right things in place to support people. I'm really excited about the work that we've got going on in the mental health sector network already. We're speaking with those guys at lunchtime, but we're gathering together a number of really interested parties across the voluntary community and social enterprise sector as well, where Navigo are a part of that, and we can start to connect with third sector organisations that are out there that, quite frankly, are better placed to do this sort of thing than a big organisation like Navigo with all of its medical input and its psychiatry. So the partnerships are the future as well, doing it together with other organisations. So it'll not be a quick fix, but it's something that we're absolutely committed to doing.
Jesse, can I ask you to come in and make your comment that you wanted to make?
Yeah, so I think that the Liverpool service sounds like a really good idea from what I've heard about it from Kieran, because I recently had a crisis situation and the only real options for under 18s is to try to contact the crisis line or, as you say, go to A&E, which aren't really the best things that you want to be doing when you're in a crisis. So, yeah, for me, I think it's about providing options before the person gets too poorly.
Anita, did you want to add anything?
I completely agree with you there, and I think one thing I'll say about our team is the staff are just hugely passionate about making a difference and helping people in a crisis situation. I think the funding has already been mentioned and plays a big part in that, but I think what plays a bigger part is a will to do something differently, and we've certainly got that in bucket loads. So I'm going to do a bit of a shameless plug for our project of the year now, because this is a quick win. This really is a quick win. So the team have come together and really thought about something they could do that would really help before a crisis. And they could kind of call it a gentle discharge, but the kind of ethos around it is it's called RISE. It's resilience, independence, strength and empowerment is how the acronyms come about. But it's really about providing somewhere for somebody to come and be together, like the people that are using the service to lead it, share their experiences, and just have little workshops and build on life skills. And this is what we're really quite interested in being part of Navigo, because that's the different way of thinking. It's a bit more than the mental health, it's more about the social side of things, friendships, and learning how to tackle those difficult things in life, like learning how to pay a bill, things that could cause you a lot of stress and tip you in a crisis if your bucket's full. So I think with the right will, we can actually make a change quite soon. So,
thanks, so moving on, we know statistically that children that are born with a physical disability or that that develop a physical disability at some point in their life, whether that's to do with illness or injury, quite often are at higher risk of poor mental health or mental health difficulties. And we want everybody, every young person, every adult to have good mental health and the right support at the right time, as we said. So I'm going to hand over to Robin for the next question.
I was born with a disability, but I didn't start getting really bad symptoms until I was about 14, 15. At that time I wasn't diagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 17. But the symptoms put me in a lot of pain, it reduced my mobility, and it made me really depressed, anxious, insecure, and just angry and bitter. So I tried to go for help. I tried to explain how my condition was making me feel. And while I was able to get help for general depression and anxiety, and it helped to a certain extent, it didn't really hit the core problem. So I sort of left it to myself. I tried to deal with it myself. Later on, after I was diagnosed, about the age of 18, I went to a social prescriber, and they recommended that I go for some physical activity to help my mental health. The only physical activity group available for disabled people was one aimed at older people. This group was meant to be for socialisation, but I didn't really feel like it would help my mental health to socialise with people 2 generations ahead of me. I wasn't able to go and make friends at any of these groups. So there was really nothing. So my question is, can Navigo provide more training to staff about how disability affects mental health, and maybe organise some more social groups or physical activity groups for young people with disabilities?
I'm going to throw that one out there. Who'd like to take that? I don't know whether you want to add anything to what you'd already said.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I think that it's another one that could be a really a quick solution to be able to do. I think hearing your story about being in different generations, that's hard. And you know, I think having a younger group for physical and mental health would be a super way of doing things.
Are the mics working? Okay. Sorry, I didn't know the mics were working. No, it sounded...
It's all right, they are, but I think we need to talk up a bit.
All right, okay. Can not hear anybody? Oh.
We'll have to speak into the mics a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry about that. That sounded awful.
Well, just to repeat then, I think Robin's idea about a physical health group for a younger generation is a really great idea.
Still can't.
Yeah?
Is that better?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry. Thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Sure, it's just... Can you hear me on the back? Yeah, that's better. Okay. So I think, yeah, that's very powerful coming from you. And as I said, it's a new service. It's like we got a plain sheet, so we are quite open to get the ideas and try to implement those. I've already been having discussions obviously with the team, with Anita, yourself, with Gary, about physical health side of things. So I had a meeting with the pediatrics department recently, because there's a lot of overlap when it comes to mental health and physical health. So which one to separate and which one takes precedence, I think it's a very hard decision. So I think both of them, they need to be tackled as we go along. So it's all about working together and being able to really provide the best. I mean, we as in YMM, we cannot do, if we cannot do everything ourselves, our partners in ANLAG or social prescribing side, they should be able to do those. So I think those links are very important for us to do. Similarly, we had a meeting yesterday with the GP colleagues about a similar issue in primary care. So there's work we already started doing, but like Mike and Simon said, we want you guys to come along and actually get us to kind of shape us in which direction you want us to go, because this is how we've been doing things, and I think your experience is much more valuable in all of that.
Thanks everyone. I think the partnerships bit really comes through there, doesn't it? That, you know, it's about working with what we've got already and kind of enhancing that and stuff as well. So, so moving on, peer support is something that's been mentioned already on the panel, and I think is really important. I know that through the work that I do, we've often talked about how important peer support is for young people. We know from research that's not just done locally but nationally that young people are much more likely to go to their peers at an early stage when they're struggling with things, and that, that having their peers and people, Robin's just talked about the importance of having people of your own age around you is really important. So that kind of role of peer support and talking about how do we do that effectively and really usefully in terms of mental health is really interesting, and I think it's the next thing we want to explore. So Adam's going to take this one.
So whilst I was waiting for therapy, I maybe got like one phone call about halfway through to be told that I've been moved up the list. I'm not even sure how long I was on that list for. When I did eventually get into talking therapy, I was put straight into a group where my confidence was. I didn't really find my voice until maybe the last 2 or 3 sessions. And I think maybe if a support worker had maybe sat in with me, that would have really benefited. Same with whilst waiting for therapy, just going back to that, if maybe I had a call maybe 1 or 2 times a week or a month just to check in on me, see how I'm doing. I think like many people would find that beneficial to just, you know, keep the hopes up a bit. I guess my question is, like, would Navigo consider having a peer support worker to help with these people waiting to receive therapy?
Yeah. Did everybody hear that all right? Yep. So, who wants to take that one? Mike?
Do you want me to start?
Anita?
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely got some ideas of having a peer support worker in the team again. We've had a peer support worker before, and it was really beneficial. We've got young people already starting to be involved in doing some things with the service. And with the project that we're hoping to get off the ground, we want that to be really peer-led as well. So I really do get what you're saying there. And I think that's something that we can grow with very little extra effort.
I think we know, again, not to relate it too much back to what's going on in adults, but we've done quite a lot of peer support work in adult services, and we're now doing peer support work in older adult services. So I see no reason why we shouldn't do it in children's services as well. But again, back to what we sort of the thread that's been going through the whole conversation is we sort of want you guys to tell us what you want so we can provide it, as opposed to us imposing a peer support work model that we think would work into children's services. But the whole principle, it's Chooks' 20th anniversary this year. Peer support work has been relatively new concept in the NHS for about the last 3 to 5 years maybe. Fundamentally, the principles that Chooks is built on is peer support work model. So we've been doing that across adult services for 20 years in Navigo, really. So we've got the skills of that, because it is about creating a community for people where they feel safe, where they feel, you know, some of the stuff we've already talked about was around development of groups, so we're absolutely committed to doing that, sort of that social model of mental health care as much as anything. You need to know that the experts are there, the clinicians are there, the psychologists are there, the nurses are there in the background, if things get to the point in your mental health where you need that professional level of support. But what we find right across the UK, and we certainly find it in adult services, having access to the right support at the right time. Again, I've said that again, but having access to the right support at the right time, and that might be from peers, that might be from groups, that might be in adults going to Andy's Man's Club, but all of that in its own nature is preventative, and that's where we need to be, because let's face it, we're sat at the minute, I mentioned it again this morning, we're sat what feels like at the minute at the start of or in the middle of the mental health pandemic.
COVID's been and gone to a certain extent. We're now living with COVID, and physical health services have started to move on from COVID. I don't think there's a massive amount of recognition yet that mental health services are now feeling that absolute pandemic wave, because children that were kept at home for several months, several years, missed a couple of years of education, or didn't get, that's created mental health problems that are now flushing into adulthood, and we're seeing that in our adult services, and no doubt we're going to see that in children's services as well through the next, at least the next generation. There's an impact of COVID that's sort of hard baked, if you like, into society now, that we're going to start to see through mental health services, and the ability for people to get the right support that they need at the right time is the only way that services are going to survive. Otherwise, we're going to be overwhelmed with it. And actually, people feeling part of a supportive community is a massive, massive part of that. And the best people to tell a young person how to manage their mental health is not me, and with all due respect, it's not Anita, Mike or Amir as well, who are infinitely more qualified than me to do it. It's somebody who's been through that journey, experiences it, and can empathise and understand it with each other. So creating those networks of people that come together is something we can do really easily, because it doesn't cost us anything. We just need to provide a space for you to congregate and get together and do that yourselves. And hopefully things like the upcoming Horizon Youth Zone that's coming, that's a really exciting, I think, adventure, if you like, that the whole town is going on now. If we can start to connect better with those, certainly the work I see Laura in the front row, the connection that we're having with Compass Go and things to sort of start to connect people at that low level, the opportunities are endless. We're sort of back to the first question now. The opportunities to connect all this stuff together is here now.
Thank you. And I think it's not to be sniffed at in terms of the impact that it has on the peer supporters as well as those being supported. It's huge, and it's really empowering to be a peer supporter and give something back, isn't it, based on the learning that you've had yourself. And it means such a lot to those being supported. Kieran, you wanted to make a comment about this as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I hope the volume is okay, by the way, but I'd just like to speak a bit about my experience accessing group support. So I go to the inclusion LGBT group at Navigo, which is for 16 to 25-year-olds, and I've been going to that for about a year now. And I struggled quite a lot with my identity and my mental health. I always have. And I think accessing that group has been so beneficial to me. The impact that it's given me, you know, doing something like this would not be something that I would ever think that I could do a couple of years ago. And a lot of that is down to the opportunities that I've been given within group and the support that I've received and the friendships that I've made. You know, I think before inclusion, the closest LGBT group was 2 hours away. And so I can only speak, you know, about how impactful that has been for me. And so, yeah, I guess I'd just like to ask if I think it's already been touched on, but if more groups could be developed with a peer support worker to support other young people on their journeys.
Do you want to add to that?
Yes, so again, going back to moving Young Minds Matters from its previous history into our new world, Anita, I and others are working with the local authority and the Integrated Care Board regarding some investment that's come to North East Lincolnshire called Better Start in Life, and we're really excited. At the top of that agenda is the opportunity for peer support workers working alongside the clinical nurses, psychologists, doctors, etc., people that have had lived experience, many around the impact on perinatal and social exclusion, if you like, but hopefully more news will follow on that in the next few weeks, touch wood. But there is likely, number one priority for us in our submission for that was around peer support workers.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so moving on, we want to explore a little bit about what does the future of Navigo and children's adolescent mental health services look like. And I think I've really heard and felt some energy around that kind of an understanding of the sense of the social, the importance of the social aspects of mental health, supporting each other, working together, and everybody bringing their expertise to the table, because we all bring something different to the table. That's so important, particularly when we're engaging with those people that we're working with, that there's different expertise that everybody brings to the table. So I know that Navigo wants to develop a youth movement, and I know that the young people are interested in kind of building and growing that over the coming years. So looking at things that we've talked about today, transitions, about making sure that the services are effective as they can be, and all working together on that. So peer support workers and positive social action, and thinking about working with eating disorders and the stigma associated to mental health. So what we want to look at in a minute is about like how all of that then communicates with the community interest company of Navigo and into the membership of that and the board. So Jessie, I think, is going to do this question for us.
So what are the senior leaders' views on having a young person, non-executive director on the CIC board?
Who wants to take that one, Simon?
Yeah, I fully support it, absolutely fully support it. There's no good at an organisation like us saying that we want to hear the voice of young people and we want to hear how they want to develop services if they're not sat around the top table when those decisions are being made. That's a principle on which the organisation's built. The way that we deliberately built the organisation when it was born back in 2011 was that the voice of the service user, the voice of the carers, the voice of the staff would be represented at the top table. So we have 3 non-executive directors currently on the KIC board, one of which is a staff member, one of which is a community member, and one of which is representing the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community. And I think we should be looking at how do we enhance that, the voice, the young voice, and bring a non-executive director role onto the board. There are some legal considerations around that. You can't be a director if you're under 16. You legally can't be a director if you're under 16. But it's about developing that youth movement so that people that are in receipt of our services and their parents and their carers feel like they're part of what's being developed and they're part of the way that the organisation works and the work plan. And you should have a forum where you can hold us to account. You know, at the minute we have the membership board, so the membership board is occupied by 5 of the elected staff reps, 5 elected community reps, and we always say them, we always reflect as an executive team that the most rewarding, if you like, membership board meetings are the membership board meetings where a community member comes to us, asks us all a question as an executive team, or holds us to account as an executive team, and we're so uncomfortable we all end up looking at our toes and asking for someone else to answer the question. Because they're the challenging conversations. You don't move forward as an organisation unless you're willing to embrace those challenging conversations. So I think we need to find the forum where young people can come together, where they can have their voice heard at the very top table. I don't know how that looks at the minute architecturally in terms of the way the organisation is built, but I do know there's a commitment and the excellent work that Amy's already doing, sort of developing that youth movement. I'm passionate about taking that forward and making sure that the right voices are heard at the right levels in the organisation, and that, as I said, that has to happen absolutely from the top, because that sets the tone. You know, the top board meeting in the organisation is the KIC board, and therefore that's where that voice needs to be heard.
Thanks, Simon. Does anybody else want to add to that before we finish, or before I summarise? Thanks very much, everybody. And yes, so lots to do, of course, always. And we're always learning, aren't we? So lots to do, but there's some really, really positive things there in terms of some of the developments from the funding and things that we might see happen in the future around groups and partnerships and engaging with young people much more in the future in relation to the organisation as a whole, but also across the different services and groups that are available. So sorry for not being able to take questions from the audience, and apologies for the issues with the microphones initially as well, but there is time, obviously there's time over lunch and stuff if you want to speak to anybody. Amy's in the wings, you saw her earlier on, and we're all around for the over lunchtime and stuff, so come along and check out anything that you wanted to about what we've been talking about today, and chat with each other. So just like to say a huge thank you to everybody on the panel, particularly the young people, because it's a scary thing to do, but so powerful and so important that we get that and we do that effectively. So we are now looking forward to lunch, I think now, all right? Oh, Jane's going to say something. And then Katie Thistleton this afternoon. So I think a round of applause for the board, please.
So, as you know, this is really nerve-wracking stuff to do this. And again, I know Pip has captured it so well, but listening to you all talk so passionately about it has been amazing to watch from the sidelines. You should all be super, super proud of yourselves. Like, you have done yourself really proud. And we've got a little gift here for each and every one of you to say thank you. And yeah, and then I think it's going to be lunch. And thank you to the senior team for having this really, really important conversation. So thank you very much. Right, I'll go in.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Pippa, and thank you, panel. So, lunchtime is now with us for the next 2 hours. The marketplace is reopened. The lunch is upstairs. And please don't forget to vote for Project of the Year. And we'll see you back in the auditorium at 1:30. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, I think I've got most of the board members now sat in the front row, which is good. So we will make a start. So I'd like to welcome you to Navigo AGM. We have had the Worshipful, the Mayor of North East Lincolnshire, with us this morning. I'm not sure if Ian has been able to stay with us this afternoon, but if he has, and he's in the audience, which I can't spot, but you're very welcome. I'd also would like to introduce Katie Thistleton, TV and radio presenter, and Katie has kindly agreed to take part in an interview later on as part of our AGM, so she'll be coming onto stage in a few minutes. I hope you've all enjoyed your lunch, and this is the formal bit of the proceedings today. The AGM brings together our staff, our service users and carers, partner agencies and other NHS organisations. The AGM is being live streamed on YouTube and on the Navigo website, and the purpose of the AGM is to account for the achievements that have been made over the last 12 months against the objectives that we set at the start of the year. Many of those objectives came from the priorities that had been identified by our members. You will hear about the financial position for last year and also something about our future plans. This afternoon is also an opportunity to celebrate the many achievements of our staff, members and partners through the awards that have been organised and led this year by our elected representatives. There are 5 award categories this year, and the winners will be announced later on in the afternoon. Can I also remind you that there will be a 15-minute break within this section, and that will be your very last chance to vote for the project of the year. So we have 3 projects bidding for your support this year. The first is My Menopause Matters, setting up a menopause support group to be accessed by both staff and by service users. RISE, a step-down programme or gentle discharge, helping to prevent self-sabotage of recovery by children and young people who are at the end of their therapeutic journey with our CAMS service. And finally, Under Our Umbrella, focusing on the growing awareness of neurodiversity amongst the workforce and creating more inclusive and neurodiverse workplaces. 3 cracking projects, all vying for your vote, so please don't waste the token that you've been given and that you can vote out in the front foyer. At this stage, I would like to introduce, and they hate me doing this, each member of the Navigo board. So as I announce their name, they're all kindly sat on the front row of the auditorium. I'll ask them to stand up and just acknowledge you. So firstly, can I introduce Andrew Waterhouse, who is our Vice Chair and Non-Executive. Andrew, thank you. Cathy Kennedy, our second Independent Non-Executive. Jo Keane, our Elective Staff Non-Executive Director. Where's Jo? Is she around? No? Okay. Gertrude Wadia, who is our BAME Network Non-Executive. And Pam Callison, who is our Service User Carer Non-Executive. I'll now move on to the motley crew that we call our executives. So first of all, Simon Beaton, our Chief Executive. Mike Reeve, our Deputy Chief Executive. Anna Morgan, Director of Corporate Services. Amma Sajjad, Medical Director. And Janine Smith, Chief Operating Officer. Thank you all very much, thank you. And I couldn't do my role without the support of the board members. They're absolutely fabulous and work really hard for the organisation, so thank you for your support. There's one bit of formal business that we need to do before we move on to our special guest interview, and that is to actually adopt the minutes of the previous AGM that was held on Thursday, the 29th of September 2022. These minutes have been available for you to view on the Navigo website. So could I ask members, please, to approve these minutes by raising your hand to actually approve? If you just raise your hand. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, it takes me great pleasure to welcome Katie Thistleton, our special guest on stage. Katie, a TV and radio presenter, is best known for her work on CBBC, Radio 1 and BBC One's Morning Live. Katie is passionate about mental health awareness. She's an ambassador for two charities, Place to Be and Young Minds. She's training to be a counsellor and has written often about the issues regularly facing our younger people. I would like you to join me in giving Katie a massive welcome to our AGM. Katie, please join us on stage. Can I also introduce, many of you will already know him, Joe Parliament-Parks, who has kindly agreed to lead the interview with Katie. You're very welcome, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Jane. A wonderful introduction.
Yes, so good.
And thank you, Katie, for joining us today as well. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I feel really intimidated now that I know that your previous speakers have been Frank Bruno and Professor Green and Fiona Phillips. I'm like, I'm really sorry you got the short straw this year with me.
No, I'm really excited to have you here. You've seen some wonderful people there that we've had in the past. I'm sure everyone here is just as excited to see you as well. Jane did a wonderful job there talking about all the stuff that you've been from CBBC to Radio 1. But do you want to sort of tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Jane did a brilliant introduction there. She basically covered it. But I suppose what I do now is I'm a Radio 1 DJ, and I've been doing that for about 6 years. I used to be a children's TV presenter, so I sort of trained as a journalist, worked in the BBC behind the scenes for a few years, got a job as a kids' TV presenter, so I used to do the bits in between the shows. CBBC HQ, it was called when I was doing it. The Broom Cupboard is what it used to be called, and that's basically what everybody knows it as. So that's what I used to do with Hacker the dog, the puppet dog. Don't know if you see much of Hacker.
I'm so excited about Hacker. Yeah, I was hoping he would come out at some point with you, just pop up at the side.
Recently become very famous from the Innocent Men viral meme, which I'm really bitter about because I'm not on that clip with him, and I think we've done loads of other funny stuff that didn't go viral. But yeah, I did that for 6 years, and then when I was working in children's TV, started getting involved with mental health charities, children's mental health charities. Through that, started hosting The Surgery on Radio 1, which a lot of you probably remember because The Surgery is a really long-standing advice show that was on Radio 1 for a long time. Our big boss at Radio 1 was the original presenter of it, and he's now the boss. And it was a phone-in show with a doctor and a presenter, so I started doing that with a wonderful lady called Dr. Rada. And then it became a Sunday afternoon show called Life Hacks. It's basically the same thing, but we play more music, it's longer, and it's a social action show and a mental health show for young people. And so we discuss whatever it is young people are going through every Sunday. And then since then, I've started to do more Radio 1, and I do a Friday morning show, a Saturday morning show now. I often cover the Drive Time show with Jordan North and Vic Hope, and sometimes the Breakfast show when Greg James is off. And yeah, do lots of BBC Morning Live as well. So that's I'm trained to be a counsellor. I missed that bit out, which I'll be qualified at the end of November if I finish my assignments. Which I'll be honest with you, it's touch and go.
We'll go quickly so you can get back to revising quickly after this.
Yeah, exactly.
You've always, as you've talked there, about a lot of things to do with mental health and all of that. What sort of got you interested in sort of pursuing that?
Do you know what? It's weird. When I go into schools, and I've actually been to a lot of schools in Humberside, when Hull was the city of culture, the BBC did loads of outreach in Hull, and that's kind of as near as I've been to Grimsby before. And whenever I go and sort of do talks in schools, I always say to kids, like, have a little think about the person that you are in school and in your friendship group, and that's probably who you could be in the working world. So when I was a kid, I look back now, and I never shut up talking at school. I never stopped talking, and when I look back, it wasn't that I was naughty. It was I always had a story to tell, you know, so the teacher would come in and say, right, everyone settle down. I think, oh God, I'm halfway through a really good story. And now I think, well, for my job on Radio 1, I have to go into studio and I have to talk about whatever's been going on in my life that day, and that's what I love to do. And when I look back now, when I was a kid, I would always read agony aunt pages in magazines. I was obsessed. I'd get a magazine straight to the problem pages. I was obsessed with people's lives and their problems and what they were going through. So I'd always had an interest in it. Then when I was 18, I lost a friend and a cousin to suicide. And I think that was, again, just a turning point in me that I was like, God, something, I don't understand the way that these issues are being dealt with. It doesn't seem right. And I've always really struggled with anxiety, but I didn't know that's what it was. So when I was a little kid, my mum used to take me for tests all the time, asthma tests, stop me eating Smarties, it's food colourings, and no kid wants that, you know, and I was always going, I can't breathe, Mum, I can't breathe, you know, and I was sweaty, I had sweaty hands. It was a nightmare when you're a teenager, you know, you're in school and you're sweaty, it's the last thing you want to be, that just opens you up to being picked on. Could never breathe, the doctors, her lungs are fine, she's fine. No one ever said it's anxiety, because I was a kid, you know, no one ever said it's anxiety, until I turned 17 and went to the doctors, and they said, this is anxiety, it's panic attacks, and I was like, well, I've had this since I was in a buggy, you know, like my mum talks about me having these symptoms since I was saying my first few words, you know, what did I have to be anxious about? And so that as well just made me think I really could have benefited from some early intervention, you know, and I didn't. And that anxiety continued. I've now since found out I've got ADHD as well, you know, all these things were kind of bubbling on, no support, no help. All those things make you be an overachiever. I was working myself too hard. I was doing all the qualifications. I was putting pressure on myself. And then I went into possibly one of the worst jobs in the world for if you have a mental health problem, TV and radio and showbiz. And then it all kind of got to a point where I just sort of had a bit of a breakdown when I was on children's TV, and I was really, really depressed and suicidal. And ended up going on antidepressants and mental health medication, and then that was like, you know, that interest was piqued even more. That was a very long answer, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, I know, I liked it though, I think, and that's all we've got time for. Thank you. No.
And on that happy note, have a lovely evening.
Yeah. So you were saying there that obviously you were in quite a down point in your life. What was the sort of catalyst that made you want to sort of seek help?
I mean, I was in a really awful place, but it's sort of a blur to me now, and I think I've since found out that depression can be like that. You don't often store your memories from that time, you know. And I was just cracking on, and I remember thinking, this is awful, what a horrible way to live, and I'm not brave enough to take any action, and I could never do that to my family, having that already happened in my family and witnessed what that does and how that destroys a family. I'll just have to live like this forever. And I used to think, hopefully I'll get ill. Hopefully something will kill me younger. That's mad to me that I felt that way now. Now I want to live forever. Now I'm like, how can I live? I want to live forever, you know? So to think I ever felt that way is terrible. And it was my mum. I was living at home. I'd been through a big breakup of a 9-year relationship, which was probably another big trigger, you know. And I was living at home again in my mid-20s, 25, and my mum kept coming in my room at night and going, I think you're depressed. And I go, get out, I'm fine. And she'd come in the next night, I think you're depressed. I'm fine, Mum, go out. And then she came in one night and she said, I think you're depressed. And I said, yeah, I think I am, you know. And I don't know, for some reason that day I agreed with her. And then once you've said it, you go, all right, what are you going to do about it then? Okay, I'll go to the doctors tomorrow and we'll get some help for it. So it was my mum's persistence that made me eventually go and sort of get some help, you know.
Oh,
she's good. Like that. She won't rest.
It's good you've got her there then.
Yeah.
It's wonderful hearing, obviously it's very sad that you went through that, but wonderful that you're so sort of open with your mental health journey and things that you've gone through. Do you think that's sort of something that's really important to you, that openness?
Do you know what? I got told by a boss, when I was going through that time, I was at Children's TV, and I went on antidepressants, and I'm sure plenty of people here are on them or have been. And you know, they don't work straight away. You go through a few weeks of sometimes feeling worse. In fact, something that I wasn't told was that when you are young like that, you can have more suicidal thoughts and feel a hell of a lot worse when you first go on them. And I didn't know that at the time. And I remember waking up in the night with these terrible thoughts and reaching for the leaflet and reading it and seeing that that was a side effect and going, okay, this will pass. And it did. But I thought, I'm going to lose my job because I'm going to work every day and I'm miserable. And in my job, and you'll get this as well, having done similar roles, you feel like you've got to be the person that's responsible for everyone else's attitude, everyone else's energy.
Yeah.
And if someone's grumpy or miserable in our business, they go, oh God, what a miserable cow, you know. And I was doing kids' TV.
That's
you know,
like times 10,
times
isn't it?
1,000. You've got to be, you know, jazz hands every day. And I remember one day I was in the makeup chair and I was getting my makeup done and my producer came and he said, hi, Casey, you all right? And I just went, hi. And he went, what's wrong? Are you ill? And I thought, oh God, I've got to put on this act every day that I'm all right. And I used to go and hide in the toilets for 5 minutes, just to have 5 minutes when no one spoke to me. And I'd have a little cry in the toilets. And I thought, I'm going to lose my job here because they're going to think I don't want to be here. And I do. I love this job, but I just can't do it right now. And actually, it's been really good for my own mental health to be open about it, because once I'd told people and once I'd done quite, you know, interviews and stuff talking about it and put it on my social media, I then felt like if I did turn up to a job and I didn't seem my best, they might think, oh, all right, maybe she's having a bad day, rather than, oh, she doesn't want to be here, or she's got no charisma, or, you know, so it's made me personally, for myself, it's made me go, oh, I can take the pressure off a bit. And what I've enjoyed about it is I now get invited to things like this. I get asked to do work that I care about, because it's really hard to do work you don't care about. It's really hard to turn up to an event and host something when you don't care about the subject. And now most of my work has been in that field. I've gone on to do more and more work in that field. And
to create an area for you that you might not have had if it hadn't been for that.
And also people come up to me now and just tell me about their problems, which I really like. You know,
it's that agony aunt part of you getting in there again.
And if I'm working on a job, I like to think that people will feel like if they're having a bad day, they can say to me, oh, I'm really struggling today. They won't feel they've got to put that front on that I used to think I'd put on.
Yeah.
I still do put it on. I mean, we all do, don't we? You know, you still feel you
definitely.
have to.
I think, like you say, when you're in this sort of role, there is just a time when it comes on. You have to like smile and go. Yeah.
Show must go on.
Yeah. Oh, you said there as well that you were saying that you have found new ways to get sort of the mental health involved in your work, but you work with a lot of charities as well, particularly with young people. What made you sort of, is it the CBBC sort of history of it, or what made you sort of go into that?
Kind of. I mean, when I started presenting on children's TV, all of a sudden you get lots of charities approach you and say, will you be our ambassador? Will you come and host these events? And I was a bit overwhelmed by it all, and one of my bosses said to me, you're not going to be able to do them all. You physically don't have enough time. So the best way of dealing with this, because you'll feel terrible saying yes to some and no to others, is to just go, I'm going to do one particular type of work. So he said, so think about what you're passionate about. So I said, well, mental health. So I got involved with a couple of mental health charities. And yeah, at the time I was meeting kids all the time, you know, doing events, and I would meet these like little girls and see the same symptoms in them that I saw in myself, and they'd have the same little stress cough. They'd be, you know, same little cough that I had as a kid, or the clammy little hands, or the breathing. Or I go into secondary schools, and I would see that the girls in particular, but of course it's boys too, just hated how they looked, and they'd have selfies with me, but they'd cover up their face. They'd either put the dog emoji on, the filter thing, or they'd just chop their face off, or they would put a hand in front of their face. And I was like, what are you doing? Get your face in the photo. And so I would like see them and see these things and be like, oh God, I just, you know, wish someone was helping them. So I think, yeah, a bit of the fact that I wanted that early intervention myself. I didn't know I wanted it, but I could have done with it. And being in the CBBC world meant that I kind of got into that.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I know you were actually, when we were outside, when we first met, you were talking to a group of young people at that point. I can see obviously your passion to talking with and working with young people, and obviously you're on the BBC Radio 1's Life Hacks as well. Is there any advice that you would offer to people, young people generally?
I always give the same piece of advice that one of my producers at CBBC used to take the mick out of me whenever I was going to a school. He'd go, are you going to tell them all to be themselves? You know, that's like the cliched piece of advice that you give everybody. And I was like, yeah, I am actually. Because, you know, I feel like through years of training to be a counsellor, years of going through therapy myself, years of doing all this stuff, it does all come back to that. And I think particularly for that age group, it comes back to being yourself. And I think you spend a lot of time in those years pretending to be something you're not, and I really did, you know, pretending to be smarter than I was when I was in those groups, pretending I'd read books I hadn't read when I went to uni, pretending to be into music I wasn't into, pretending to just doing things to kind of fit in with the crowd, and it's the most exhausting thing for your mind you can do is in some way not be yourself, whether that's in your job, in your relationship, in your friendships, in your family, in your general lifestyle. If you're not kind of expressing your true self, I think that's where a lot of those problems stem from, and I think that's kind of what's happening for those years. So that's something I always try and hammer home. Also, one of my favourite quotes is, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So I'm always hammering home how important it is, you know, to make sure you've got the people around you that enrich you and leave you feeling good. Because I think on reflection now I've realised that that's definitely a big thing too. I do believe that you sort of become the 5 people you spend time with, you know?
Oh, definitely. I think, when you get in new relationships and things, you find out new things you enjoy and all of that. You've said as well, talking with these children and younger people and sort of meeting those people often, have you found that there's sort of a recurring issue that they always want to talk to you about, or is it sort of everybody's as different as everybody else? Or?
It's funny, I did a book for 10 to 16-year-olds a few years ago when I was on children's TV, and it was an agony aunt book, basically. So I wanted to create what is in those magazines in a book. So I went out to schools and we sort of put it out in Top of the Pops magazine and Girl Talk magazine on social media, and we got sort of real 10 to 16-year-olds to message in with their problems. And such an overwhelming amount of them were about homework. It was just like so funny. I was like, why? Like, it was like we had all these different piles, and we had sort of like family problems, bullying, sexuality, and then it was like homework. And I think that was maybe because a lot of them were filling those out in school. So they were like homework and like exam stress. I definitely think exam pressure is a big one. If I could put it down to one word, I'd say pressure. You know, I think it's lots of different problems, but I think pressure is the key word that you're feeling at that time. You know, you want to be, you want to get a good job, you want to, get a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. You want to be popular, you want to impress your parents, you want to be good looking. There's so much pressure on you at that time to do all those things. And doing life hacks, you know, we get all kinds of different issues. Of course, people having issues coming to terms with their sexuality. Climate anxiety is a really big one amongst that generation, actually, that I think perhaps us older people don't feel in the same way. Social media is obviously a really, really big one. But yeah, I would say just pressure to get a good job, pressure to buy a house, all that stuff, just the pressure of transitioning from kid to adult.
Yeah, obviously, from my childhood, and I think we're a similar age, so I think there was obviously always those pressures around, but obviously you mentioned social media there. We were sort of the first generation with the internet really freely available. Yeah. But do you think young people today have to come up against different pressures than we did?
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, I can only speak for the 34 years I've been alive, but I feel like the problems have always kind of been the same, but maybe they are just, present themselves differently now. I think those pressures have always been there. We've always worried about getting jobs, about, you know, putting food on the table, about impressing our parents, about getting a partner, about how we look. I think those issues have always been there, but they're perhaps just different now. It's a completely different kettle of fish now. You put sort of social media into the equation. And yeah, is it worse? I suppose, I don't know, and maybe people that were alive in the war would say, no, it's not. No, it's not worse that you've got Instagram. So I think it's really hard to compare time frames like that, isn't it? But I think social media definitely brings up a massive amount of problems. You can't escape all that stuff now. You can't escape the body image pressures. You can't escape the bullying, you know.
No, I think even when you're an older age now, where you're not maybe sort of 15, or there's still pressure even for everybody. We get like houses, like holidays, things like that. The people are still going, what are you doing? Is my holiday better than your holiday? Is, you know,
totally. And I do think as well that pandemic gap that everyone's talking about now, which is sort of like the catch-up that's happening, particularly if you're in any of those transitionary ages, I think. So if you were at school, or you were going from primary school to secondary, or you're going from secondary to college, or college to uni, or uni to job, if you're in any of those stages, I think, over the past few years, I do think there's been a gap in development, perhaps, and people feel like they've lost a load of their years.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it a lot on life hacks, you know. of women my age who are sort of in their mid-30s and haven't had children maybe, and maybe haven't got married yet, haven't found a partner, and they've got like, I was 30 when I went into the pandemic, and all of a sudden I'm 35, and you know, it's feeling like there's been a lot of missed opportunity because of that. And I think that's been more apparent in those ages where so much changes, doesn't it? Think of what changes between being 11 and 16 in that time that you're at school. What changes between being 16 and 21? You're two different people completely.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we're only just really out of the pandemic. Do you think there'll be sort of a long-term issue with some of those people as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, mental health works that way, doesn't it? You don't see the effects immediately. These things happen over years. So I suppose we'll be catching up with it for sure.
Yeah. We talked briefly about social media as well and that impact on young people. With these different areas that children and young people have available to them now, do you think it affects the way they sort of seek help with their mental health?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I suppose it probably does. You know, the whole Dr. Google thing is bad enough for our generation, isn't it? But certainly there's probably a lot of unsolicited advice going out there on social media. Something we've covered a lot on Life Hacks is diagnosing happening on TikTok. So this is something we see a lot. So I see video after video telling me I've got ADHD because I sleep with my hands like this, which I do, to be fair, with paws, little T-Rex. If you sleep with T-Rex paws, apparently that means you've got ADHD, but don't quote me on that.
When I'm in bed later,
Dr.
I'm going to be like, where are my hands?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that's true. I think I'll have arthritis early doors because I sleep like that. But you're constantly being diagnosed every time you go on, and we've had conversations on the show about how helpful that is. I'm very pro-diagnosis. I think that sometimes putting that name on anxiety, depression, you know, anorexia nervosa, binge eating disorder, ADHD, autism, I think that can be so helpful in making you realise that you're not weird, it's not you that's done something wrong, it's a recognised health problem, it's not your fault. It's something that can be dealt with, not a health problem necessarily, but it might just be that you're not neurodivergent, your brain works differently. I think that can be really, really helpful. But we've certainly had conversations on our show about whether there can be too much labelling, and whether there can be convincing people they've got something. To be honest, I don't think you can convince someone they've got a problem. I think if someone's got a problem and they want help, they deserve to access that help.
Yeah,
I don't think people will necessarily wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to go and access some help for my mental health for the hell of it. I think everybody needs that.
What can I have today?
Yeah. I think everybody needs that help is what
to be able to get that
is
help
the situation. Yeah, and it's just that there's varying degrees of severity, you know.
Okay. So we talked about social media there, but do you think there are different ways now that young people can seek mental health help if they want to, or do you think it's still the sort of traditional routes that people take?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps I don't really know the answer to that question. I feel like everybody here probably knows a lot better than I do about how that works. You know, I've been doing my placement as a counsellor, and certainly when people are coming to me, they've been referred by a GP or they've kind of self-referred, but I don't know sort of how else that happens for young people. Again, I work with a lot of charities as well, of course, and I know that can be a really sort of helpful way of. So I think there's lots of different ways now of accessing that support for sure as well. You know, if the waiting lists are long, there are charities. And
do you think the stigma is still there for younger people? I know when I was growing up, the idea that you had any mental health issue or needed any help with anything to do with your mental health, you'd almost be ostracised for it. Whereas do you think it's sort of developed now where younger people have more of an understanding that actually everybody has mental health and it's about looking after it?
I think so. I have a lot of faith in that younger generation. The listeners of Life Hacks and the people that we get involved and the kids that I meet in schools, their attitude is completely different. And that's why charities like Place to Be, who I work with, that provide counselling in schools, I think if like in all schools it was just the norm that you have a counsellor and people go and see the counsellor and they mention it, and it's not like, oh, you're that one kid in the school that's the problem child because they've got to go and see a therapist, which is how it felt when we were younger, like you say. The more we can do of that, the better. And their attitude is completely different, you know, even just the way they talk. The way they will do TikToks and Instagrams about their mental health, the way they've even got terms for things that we didn't have terms for, FOMO, you know, that's a real big part of anxiety, fear of missing out. we never had a word for that. Like, it's something I've struggled with my whole life, but we didn't have a word for it. And then Gen Z made a word for it. Like, they just make a word for everything. And I think it's brilliant because we need these terms to be able to go, oh, everyone's dealing with that. They're talking about it on Radio 1 today. Everyone's experiencing that thing. Okay, it's normal. So, yeah, I think the stigma is a lot better, but I still think there's a lot of people who have the same attitude, you know. I'll be honest with you, I'll sometimes go on and read an article on the Daily Mail, but usually written about one of my sort of colleagues, and I'll look at the comments, and there's still a lot of people that are, oh God, everyone thinks they've got something wrong with them. I did a film for Morning Live about the relationship between binge eating and ADHD, because I've suffered with binge eating disorder for quite a few years. Yeah, ADHD, yeah. And I didn't know that was a thing, that they thought there was a link. Until I was working with a producer one day on Morning Live who said there's this link. And for years on Radio 1, people had texted me and said, I think you might have ADHD, Katie, and I just ignored it. And I think I probably held a bit of that stigma of, oh, everyone thinks they've got ADHD these days, everyone's aren't we all just a bit neurodivergent? You know, I think I probably held some of that stigma despite having, you know, worked in this world for so long. And people would text in when I was talking about fussy eating or not liking certain textures or leaving my suitcase on the train again. Which was all just like funny stuff to talk about, and they would send really nice messages, and it would be ladies going, hi Katie, I'm a woman in her 30s, and ADHD goes quite undetected in women, adult women, you know, I think you should get checked out. I just ignored them until this producer said to me, oh, I want to make a film about the connection between ADHD and binge eating. And I was like, sorry, what? There's a connection. Anyway, I did a film for Morning Live about it, and the Daily Mail did an article about it, and it was like my first brush with the Daily Mail, and I was like, oh God. And the comments were just all people going, oh, it's just an excuse to be fat, an excuse to eat, you're greedy, you're lazy, like all these celebrities, they want an excuse. Every celebrity thinks they've got something wrong with them, they're jumping on a bandwagon, da-da-da. So I see that a lot in adults still. That stigma's really there. So I suppose I've got faith in the younger generation, but that's got to fight through, you know, because they're going home to maybe parents that have that attitude.
Of course.
And so we've got to fight through and push that message so that attitude dies out. That'll die with us, hopefully.
Yes, time for that to go, definitely. Well, it's been obviously wonderful chatting with you here today, but as well as this, wasn't the beginning of your Navigo visit. You've been touring lots of facilities today. How have you found the look around?
I am so impressed. I don't think I've not met a single person today that hasn't just radiated joy and seemed so lovely, and that's so rare to visit an organisation. And I know you're having a fun day today. I know this is probably, I'm sure you have much harder days at work than this, but still, it's really reflective of the company as a whole, I think. And those facilities are so good. I've never seen anything like it. And I've done a lot of visits of mental health facilities. The Harrison House, I was particularly impressed with, because a lot of my clients will say to me, especially the young people, we'll go through a safety plan if we're worried about risk, and they will say, I won't go to A&E. And I'll say, you know, you can go to A&E. And they'll say, I won't go to A&E. I don't want to go to A&E. I'm not walking in an A&E. I've been there before. I don't like it. I'm scared I'll be sectioned. And so the fact that I walked in that today at Harrison House, I thought it was a cafe. I was like, hi, everybody. I thought it was just like a nice cafe. The fact that that's where you can go, and it's specifically for people who are in crisis with their mental health, it's unbelievable. If that was in every town, we would be in a much better place. And I wish it was. I really wish it was. I've been asking questions all day to everybody. I think I've probably driven all the lovely people that have shown me around mad, because I've just been like, and what about this? And how does it work? And how is it funded? And what? Is this the only one like this? Are there any others? Because I'm just like, why is this not in Manchester, where I live? Why is this not everywhere? Why is this not in Oldham, where I do my placement for the NHS? And I find that people are coming in and they're coming in for counselling, but actually that's only scratching the surface. They need so much social support, and I feel like I'm, you know, in this desperate position of trying to help them, but they need a much more collaborative approach, which is what it seems like you've got. I wish this could be anywhere. So my last question is, like, how can this be everywhere?
That's a good question.
Can Navigo be in every city? Because I'm threatening to give up my career and move to Grimsby now, just so that I can access this mental health support, and my mum and dad one day can go into the elder care that you've got, because I've got relatives in care homes at the moment with dementia, and it's terrible. Their experience is terrible. It's amazing. So you all do a brilliant job, and yeah, you've succeeded in converting me. I'm Team Navigo.
That's what we like. Well, like you say about Navigo going everywhere, it has now become an all-age provider, and we're sort of dealing with younger people. Do you think there's a sort of key focus that Navigo should be looking at with younger people?
Well, I know you heard directly from some of the young people that access your services this morning, which is absolutely where to go, because I'm certainly not the expert. And I was chatting to some of them outside, and they were lovely. I think, and they did sort of back me up on this, something that I feel like I hear time and time again is when people turn 18, they're sort of thrown into adult services, and it shouldn't just be like, right, your date of birth, and that means right now you go into this other service, when you might be in the middle of some really good care and some really important care, and you've got a relationship with the people you're working with, and it's really working. That's the sort of thing that we get wrong, I think. And so I think that's key. And I know that you are looking more at a 16 to 25 model, is that right? Which I think is brilliant. That age group, that works, I think. And I also think, and you do this really well from what I've seen, making it the norm, you know, making it seem like everyone does this. Everyone has mental health problems, and everyone has to access counselling and therapy every now and again, or go on to medication, or perhaps be in overnight in a facility, or, you know, making that just the norm so that no one feels like we did when we were younger, where you're the school weirdo if you need to access some help. And I think that's massively changing. And what I've seen from your services today is that that clinical environment is not here. It does feel like that's just something people need and something people benefit from, you know. So I think keep up the good work with that.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Well, I think that has meant that we've now reached the end of our time here today. I could stay, do another half an hour. We'll just keep going. It'll be fine. But thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's hear it up for Katie.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, and thank you to you as well. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And we'll pass on now back to Jane as well. So
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. Well, as you know, things at the Navigo AGM are always fluid. And what we're doing, we're just going to bring forward the break. So we're going to take our 15-minute break now. So this is your very last opportunity to vote for the project of the year. And that will just give us a bit more time to get all of that finalised, ready to announce the results at the end of the AGM. So 15-minute break now. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we're now, many apologies, but we are ready to start the next section of the annual general meeting, and it takes me great pleasure to welcome our brilliant Chief Executive, Simon Beaton, who's going to present his annual review. Welcome on, Simon.
Thank you. There's not many people out there. Shall I wait for a few? No. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Simon Beaton. I'm your Chief Executive. It gives me great pleasure to be here this afternoon in front of so many people. I thought Katie was brilliant, to be fair. I thought, you know, that's the second year in a row we've had a special guest who's been really candid and really open and shared their own mental health journey with us. I know while Katie was going around the units this morning, I know there's a lot of positive feedback from the units about how she was, how she presented. She's got a lot of experience in and around mental health services right up and down the country. And for somebody like that to bring that experience to us and say those kind things she did about our services, I think sort of is a huge testament to the work that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. So I just wanted to say that before we move on. So before I dive into going through what happened in 2022-23, I just wanted to take a minute really and a couple of slides in a few minutes just to reflect on our organisation, because I'm conscious that the organisation continues to evolve, it continues to grow. We've just become, as we've been mentioning all day, we've become an all-age provider of mental health services now, since the 1st of April, taking on children and adolescents. And sometimes we dive into the detail about what's happened in the last year without actually having a chance to reflect on where the organisation's come, actually, over the last, 12 and a half years, since 2011, when we spun out in April of 2011. So we were 20 million. As you'll hear from Anna, you'll hear more detail from Anna later, we're now £50+ million organisation. So that's a big organisation. We now employ over 1,000 staff. And if you include Nurturio and others in that, we're touching on often 1,200 staff, depending on bank staff and things. So it's a huge organisation now. And events like this are a real opportunity to bring everybody together
to see what's happening right across the organisation. And I don't know about you, but I've been absolutely blown away by the marketplace today. I think it's been phenomenal. You know, I have that sort of nagging doubt in my head every AGM year. If you hear me talk about it, I talk about it as like professional Christmas Day, because it's the day when all the Navigo family come together and celebrate what's happened in the last year, a bit like your own family come together often on Christmas Day and things. So, and just hearing the passion in the people that have put those boards together, I think the boards are probably better than they've ever been today, the display boards, so I don't envy the reps who've had to choose the winning display board this year. You know, I just think you have that, as I said, you have that sort of nagging doubt the night before an AGM. Please God, don't turn up and be like 40 people there rattling around in the auditorium and it all just fall flat on its face. But it gets better and better and better every year. And I think that, again, the hard work that the team have put in, putting that together, I think is brilliant. So, as I mentioned, we've got over 1,000 staff now. We've got over 500 of those who have sort of given £1 and been a shareholder and can put their little orange token in the project of the year, as well as vote on whether you want to keep me as the chief exec, Jane as the chair, and lots of other things that go on around the organisation. So if you're not a staff member, please do consider becoming one. Have your voice, have your vote. 350 plus community members. That, again, that shows the level of engagement in our community, in the organisation. We've got, community members come and go across the years, but we've had a stable level of well over 300 people who receive our services or are members of the community or are carers who genuinely want to have a view and a way in which our organisations run. And that's the beauty, I think, of the way that our organisation comes together and treats everybody as equals. A little bit more about us, just to put some scale on the numbers, really, you know, because often you don't see this. This is directly taken from our quality accounts for this year. So we've had 121,665 attended secondary care contacts. That's a phenomenal amount of people that have come to our organisation. 18,500 NHS talking therapy contacts, over 12,000 referrals through single point of access. And I was talking to the guys on their display board earlier. That's growing, that's continuing to grow. The pressure in single point of access and crisis services are significant and continuing to grow. 26,000 occupied bed days. We continue to add bits of beds into our service to meet demand. That's exactly what we're here to do, identify that demand and meet it. But as we grow, obviously bed occupancy goes up as well. So 26,000 plus occupied bed days. But the most important one, hence why it's last really, 98% of service users will recommend us to family and to friends and family. That's the acid test, isn't it? You know, the staff survey for me, the acid test, how does it feel to work in our organisation? Things like the community mental health survey and things like the friends and family test, they're the acid tests of whether you've actually got an organisation that's healthy or not. If people are saying it's a good place to receive care and people are saying it's a good place to deliver care, then you've got half of it right. Never mind the KPIs and the performance indicators and all that sort of nonsense that the NHS tell us we have to do. And we do have to do it, you know, we're contractually committed to do it, but actually the acid test of an organisation for me is, do people like working here? Do people want to receive services here? And fortunately, we do get that right more often than we don't. So again, just before I go and dive into, I think just how does that come about? How are we an organisation that is able to post those sorts of numbers, get that sort of feedback from the people that we work with and people that work with us? And I think it's about that. We talk about it quite a lot. We talk about the 3 pillars of public health, or you might have heard me previously talk about the 3 pillars of public health. I'm conscious that people like Katie come along, they have a look at our services and they go, wow, we wish we could have that in Manchester. We literally get that all the time. And I suppose we don't often communicate that particularly well with you guys, the staff and the service users, actually quite how special and different what we've got in North East Lincolnshire is. Only 2 weeks ago, we had the National Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. If you don't know, Claire Withers is our Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, and that is where staff can reach out to somebody and say, I think something's wrong in this organisation. I think the care that's being given is bad, or and people can reach out to the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. Maybe some of you have seen the Panorama programme recently on Edenfield. There's been a lot of criticism of what's happening in Norfolk and Suffolk at the moment. There's been some criticism about what's happening in Tees-Esk and Wear Valley, etc., etc. So that, and the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian came to see us in light of what's happening there. And again, the National Freedom to Speak Up Guardian went away and said, wow, 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 I can see exactly why because our organisation scored so highly, through the surveys on a freedom to speak up culture, she wanted to specifically come and see us, and she travelled all the way from Somerset to do it. She said exactly the same. Wow, the services here are absolutely amazing. Can't believe it, the staff are so friendly, your environments are so good. I'm not saying we always get it right, but what I'm saying is there is something in this organisation that's a little bit special and a little bit different. And it is around those 3 pillars of public health. It's the stuff we were talking about on the children's panel this morning. It's not that people need more. What I say, when, and, you know, our organisation gets rolled out into the King's Fund in London, one of the biggest health think tanks in the country. Mike and I recently are supporting guys, you might have heard of the Maudsley, South London and Maudsley Hospital, revered as the best mental health organisation in the country. They come to us for advice on how to deliver their mental health services. And they came to me and Mike recently. I suppose what I'm saying is it's about, look, all of those things gathered together. It's about recognising that we're not an organisation that tries to diagnose people, medicate them and discharge. Whilst that is important, diagnosis, medication and discharge, what we try and do at our best as an organisation is find people somewhere to live, somewhere to work and someone to love. The idea being that if you've got those 3 things in your life, your mental health is likely to be stable. So if we can do those things where we buy houses for people, we've done that many times. You know, our first ever project of the year scheme was for Chooks to buy some houses, do them up and rent them out to service users. That's been successful. You think about that analogy around somewhere to work, somewhere to be, a meaningful occupation of people's time. Why did we buy a garden centre? What a random idea for a mental health provider to buy a garden centre. No, it's not a random idea at all. Not only does that garden centre make a little bit of profit that we can put back into our services, doesn't go to a second home for Jane and I in Barbados, goes back into our organisation and we reinvest it. But much more importantly than that, it provides employment for people who might have a lived experience. It provides opportunities for vocation, training, education, those sorts of things that get, and a sense of belonging. So people go to the garden centre and feel that sense of belonging. They belong to something. They belong to Navigo. They belong to the garden centre. And that's really important to us. And someone to love. We did try that wedding venue thing that time, didn't we? Get people married. And we're not going to open a dating agency or anything like that. But it's the conversation we're having this morning again in Children's was about groups. About can we set up groups for people that actually don't need that hard-end clinical care. What they need is somewhere to belong, somewhere to feel like they belong, somewhere to feel like they're loved, somewhere to feel like they've got a place to be. And I think that if we twist our organisation in that direction and support people with that live, work, love analogy, everything else sort of falls into place naturally, I think. So I was conscious last night as I was going through this and thinking, right, I'll do the 22-23 annual review. That actually, I get a lot of chance to stand in front of a lot of people, a lot of leaders in the NHS talking about Navigo and what's a bit special and what's a bit different. We don't often talk about it in our own organisation, so I just wanted to do that before I dive into what's happened in 22-23. So if you bear with me a sec, I will now go into what happened in 22-23. And as per usual, it's been a bumper year of things that are going on and things that are still going on and rolling into this current year. So April 22, the results of the previous year's NHS staff survey were out. Best in the country, again. The best organisation in the country on pretty much every metric right across the NHS staff survey. It's now been split into the NHS's 7 people promises, and we're the top scoring organisation, provider organisation, people that provide care. Out of 217 organisations, this is the best organisation in the country to work for. Doesn't mean everybody's happy, but it means the vast majority of people who work in our organisation are happy. We welcome Nurtrio into the family, and they're here this afternoon. Give us a whoop, Nurtrio, where are they? Yeah, Nurtrio are here. They're now part of the family. I think it's fair to say they're part of the family. We're still working with them. We were still bringing them on a journey with us. But it took a long time to get Nurtrio into the Navigo family, if you remember. And it's now, 18, 19 months since they've become part of the family. And we're still working with them to do that. And we'll do the same with our children and adolescents guys. So welcome, Nurtrio. You know you're more than welcome. 2021 Project of the Year was launched. Again, we're still in April of 2022. The Neuropsychiatry Service. Hopefully you've had a chance to see their display board today and the amazing work they do. I love that little brain thing that they've got with the trees and stuff like that in there. That was brilliant. Overwhelmed with demand. They recognised there was a demand there. They're now overwhelmed with demand. There was clearly people falling through the gaps that weren't receiving services before that are now receiving them now. So we're now looking at how do we move that neuropsychiatry service on? How do we get it funded full time? How do we work with other partners to get that funded and paid for? Installed the first of our Happy to Chat benches. That was outside Navigo House, and we're on about now rolling out another couple we were talking about only yesterday. We need some more Happy to Chat benches down Peaks Lane so we can get people talking to each other down there. We've also, since then, we've supported a bench for East Marsh United. I know some of the East Marsh United guys were here today. Again, we've donated them a tree and a chatty bench to go onto the East Marsh. So that's the start of something bigger for us in terms of getting people talking to each other, that sort of social dynamic that I was talking about earlier. Talking tables at the Potting Shed, very similar theme, but we just put a simple sign on some of the tables in the Potting Shed restaurant saying, if you're on your own and you're happy to talk to someone else, just put this sign on your table. Somebody else who might be lonely might come and talk to you. But it's often the simple ideas that actually have the biggest impact. So we're really proud of doing that through the garden centre. One of the main sponsors of the Great Grimsby 10K, thanks to those people who ran the 10K a couple of years. I know Andrew Waterhouse did, one of our non-execs did it a couple of years, raised some money for Gardner Hill. And I think that really gives the organisation a really strong profile as well, because I don't know about you, but I still see quite a lot of the T-shirts that are given out at the end of the race as people are training, going out. So Navigo's name is out there, and it's out there all the time. It's a really good opportunity for us to get into people's park, get the name of Navigo known, get the squeezy brains out there, get people talking about mental health. It's all that anti-stigma work that we do around mental health that's really important. We celebrated 10 years of Rarian Fields, I never know, everybody pronounces it differently. Rarian Fields, we had an event at, it was down Cambridge Road, what's it called? Anyway, we had our AGM there one year. We had an event there to celebrate 10 years of that eating disorder unit, and that's a special landmark itself for Rarian Fields, but it's a real special landmark for Navigo, because when we became Navigo, that was our first real sort of major project to take on outside of the sort of safety net of the NHS. It was like we recognised a demand that was out there, and staff came to us, the three Mandys, the three Musketeers came to us at the time and said, we want to set up a specialist Tier 4 eating disorder unit. And we went, well, do you really? Great. We made it happen. It's happened now. It's hugely successful. I'm so proud of Rarian Fields and what it does and what it achieves for people who are struggling with eating disorders. It's a phenomenal service. You only need to walk around there and you can feel it. A bit like Katie said today, feels very, very non-clinical, and that's some of our most challenging service users. You know, it's the highest mortality rate of any mental health illness there is, but getting them in that homely environment, I think, has been transformational for some of those service users. We announced the partnership with the football club. Again, this is really powerful anti-stigma work that we're doing here around the football club. We announced the partnership with them, and I'll come on to a little bit more about the Mental Health Awareness Match Day, but that, again, has sort of grown arms and legs, if you like, in terms of that partnership. You know, the football club have got a really good reach, particularly in a specific cohort of people who attend football matches, who may not be as comfortable talking about their mental health as maybe some others. So that's a real opportunity for us to get into a real sort of anchor institution, if you like, in Grimsby. You know, it's a bit of a religion in the town, isn't it, football? It's the only professional sport that goes on in the town, and that gives us a whole different reach, and we look to develop that partnership further with the opening of Tees House, which is coming up soon, which is named after Matt Tees, the Grimsby Town footballer, because his wife has been engaged in our services. Matt's been through our older adult services, and again, that sort of just cements that partnership even further, but it does give us a really strong reach, and obviously the Paul Merson last year did some of that as well. We established the Mental Health Sector Network. Now, that might not mean a lot to a lot of people in the room, but what it is that we've brought together, and this is where we could actually start to make a really, really positive difference over the next 3 to 5 years. We've brought together a number of organisations in North East Lincolnshire who support people on their mental health journey. So whether that be the likes of Compass Go, who do the mental health support teams in schools, whether that be my CPO, the guys who run the Mental Health Sector Alliance, whether it be James Wilson, who James was here earlier, I've forgotten James's surname, the Canoe River Cleaner. We can now, what we can do through that sector network is bring together the voices of everybody or anybody in North East Lincolnshire who has a passion around mental health and find out actually where is the right place to be doing these services, what is the right thing for us to do as a whole mental health partnership. We've got the local authority around the table, we've got public health colleagues around the table. It's really, really positive now about how we can all start to work together to make a big difference. Again, like we were talking about this morning on the children's panel, it's about finding people connections to things that's already going on. This is not about Navigo opening a leisure centre to support people. It's about us connecting with Links Inspire and saying, have you got something going on for children who have got a mental health difficulty but also a physical disability, exactly like we heard this morning. And it's about being able to connect people in a different way. That sector network is really starting to mature now. Relationships are starting to come together so we can start really working as a partnership. So that was a really important milestone. It's not Navigo leading, this is all of us leading together about how do we all collectively use our might and our resources, if you like, to support people with mental health. We won the Social Investment Award at the Social Enterprise Yorks and Humber Awards for our older people's investment plan, so that was the Granger Manor. So they were really excited that an organisation like us had branched out, bought into those 2 new buildings and started to develop that, sort of find that gap, if you like, for people that were struggling with long-term complex dementia, etc., and us to be able to put a service in there and do that. So we were fortunate enough to win that award. We welcomed Paul Merson to our AGM, so we're now at this point last year, we welcomed Paul to talk about his mental health, gambling and addiction, and again we had a brilliant day here last year, and I think Paul was a really inspirational speaker and did a really good job for us, so it's just a reflection that we're here now. Can't believe it was a year ago, and here we are a year on, back in the room again. Headed to Blundell Park, this tied in with World Mental Health Day, 10th of October every year. What we've got now solidly in the diary with Grimsby Town is the first home match for Grimsby, either just before or just after World Mental Health Day, will be a mental health awareness match day. And so we went over to there for when Grimsby played Crawley, and I've got to say the buy-in from the football club was phenomenal. They gave us lots of display boards. The match day programme that day was full of discussions about mental health, and the first team wore Navigo t-shirts to warm up in. Took lots of photographs in that, so that really was really powerful anti-stigma. Massive thank you to all the guys who volunteered on the turnstiles that day. But some of the little stories that came from that are the really important bit. 2 chaps walked in, I think it was Christina Parker who told me this, our comms lead. 2 chaps had walked in, and we had some little wallet-sized cards that we were giving out to people, which was about shout, 85258, text 85258 if you need some support. Handed a wallet-sized cards out to 2 guys, and one of the guys said, "Oh, I already get support from Navigo," and his mate had no idea. So they wandered off away from Christina with his mate going, "I didn't know you was getting support from Navigo." "Oh yeah, they're doing it." So that in itself, they've just started a conversation between 2 chaps who probably go to the football every week, have never talked about mental health, started a conversation about mental health. That alone, that one card alone, might have actually saved somebody's life. So you know, when you put it down to that sort of level, it's really, that's how powerful getting that message out can be. So we really look forward to developing that partnership with the football club. The Garden Centre, something that we're all really proud of. It's amazing, isn't it, the Garden Centre? If you get a chance to go up there, please do. And please support it, because the money just comes back to us, ultimately, doesn't it? You know what I mean? If you spend it in there, it comes back in here, and we all get to support people with mental health. I know I'm preaching to the converted there, but there you go. But it was named one of the UK's 100 best independent businesses. I think the 100 best independent businesses in the UK is amazing, and what a massive achievement for them, and a massive well done to them. We came out top in the CQC's annual Community Mental Health Survey. We were the only organisation, they have categories where performing much worse than expected, performing worse than expected, performing as expected, better than expected, and much better than expected. We're the only organisation in the country that's performing much better than expected. And actually, it was embarrassingly higher than everybody else. Thank you, Henrietta. It was embarrassingly higher than everybody else. It was so good, it was embarrassingly higher than everybody else. So that's a huge, huge credit to our community mental health teams, and long may it continue. We announced we'd become the new provider of CAMS, of Young Minds Matter, in April 23, so we're in November at this point. This was an exciting time, knowing that we were going to bring in all those guys from Young Minds Matter. Really exciting, really nervous, really anxious, all those emotions rolled into one. And here we are now, 10, 11 months after that, and it feels like they've been with us forever, to be honest with you. I think they've been absolutely phenomenal, and that's a huge credit to the leadership in the executive team, but also the leadership in Young Minds Matter has been phenomenal, you know, in terms of what they've done, how they've brought the staff through, how they've brought the staff on the journey with them. you can see from this morning's conversations we've got some really, really ambitious plans for how we can develop children's services, how we can connect it better with adult services. But without the buy-in and support of those staff, who quite frankly have been phenomenal since they've come in April, we're not going to get anywhere. And the fact that we've got such an enthusiastic group of staff who've put a project of the year together this year and are clearly starting to think in that creative way and clearly starting to feel part of Navigo, I think is amazing. We co-hosted a recruitment fair in India alongside regional partners, and that's been a huge success for us. We've got Professor Kumar here today, I think, if he's still around. I know he was here this morning, who's one of the most preeminent psychiatrists in the whole of southern India, running a huge institution in Manipal in India, so we welcome him today. So we're not only now North East Links or regional, we're international. And I've got to say a huge credit to Mike, Deputy Chief Exec on this one, who's led right across the whole of the Humber and North Yorkshire. This partnership has the potential to transform staffing in its entirety across the whole of possibly the NHS in the north of England. Never mind just psychiatry within Navigo. This is much bigger than that. And I know a lot of tenacity, a lot of time has gone in, particularly by Mike, and I know Joe Lee Carrington's been supporting him as well. So a huge credit to them, and we look forward to seeing how that partnership develops over the next year or so. And obviously welcome to those guys into the organisation that have come through that Indian recruitment route. We hosted an international suicide prevention conference again, we're in November. We flew some guys over from America, and some of you might know that we're looking to develop in partnership with Washington DC, a CAMS, which is the Collaborative Assessment and Management of Suicidality. It's a different way of looking at suicide risk, and we're trying to develop that in our services and also share that with the rest of the NHS and the rest of the UK as well. And as part of that work, there were several hundred people that we hosted on an international suicide prevention conference. Christmas, coming up to Christmas now, we partnered with pubs, clubs and cafes around the region to launch the mental health support beer mats. So you might have seen some pictures that went round just before Christmas last year where it was just saying, talk to a friend, talk to somebody, reach out, have your say, 85258. And the comms team quite cleverly put together some beer mats. So again, how can we start those conversations happening in places where mental health is not naturally spoken about, in pubs, clubs and bars? And I think that's really, really important. Again, anti-stigma message. We celebrated 1 year of One Front Door. One Front Door was sort of a brainchild from quite a long while ago, where we recognised that people were reaching out to our organisation for support and not getting support, whether that was because they weren't meeting caseness, as they were calling it back then in IAP, so they effectively weren't poorly enough to receive a service. But we were saying, hang on a minute, we need to do something about this. How can we put a service in that supports people when they reach out for help? And One Front Door was born, and they're a small group of staff delivering a massive service across masses of people. Again, been inundated with referrals, but what they're doing is picking people up who might not be ready for clinical support, might not need medication, but what they do need is some help with their housing or their employment or a relationship or some debt, and we're actually sort of hand-holding them to the right service, getting them the right support, so they don't actually start to get worse, start to escalate, start to need crisis services and the more formal services. And it's been an enormous success, such so now that it's added on more employment support into there. It's starting now to do green and blue social prescribing and direct people in that route as well. So a really positive future, I think, for One Front Door, and a really, really valuable addition to our services. We purchased a biodiesel processor. We're going green. Sally Gell spent an awful lot of time developing us a green plan and a sustainability plan. And so in our urge to go green, what we've done is purchased a biodiesel processor, which allows us to convert cooking oil from our units and from the garden centre and other places and turn it into diesel fuel for our estates and our fleet. So that's really, really good. Going green. And just a quick plug here for the strategy that's been launched today. So if you want to use the QR code, you can have a look at what our strategy is. A big thank you to everybody who took part in it last year, because the strategy was up and around the site last year and people were giving us their opinions and their thoughts. We've now been able to shape that into what does our organisation look for the next 5 years. So what does 2023 to 2028 look like? We've called it Our Future and Our Way Forward. So please do take a read of that. It is a live document, it's not set in stone. If there's something in there that you're horrendously offended by, or something there that you think this is really not the way I want our organisation to go, that's exactly what the membership is for. Please continue to give us your feedback and we'll do that. And just, you might have seen, and you might not have been told necessarily, but as part of that, and the reason for that being launched today is because we've changed our brand. So with the advent of things like children and adolescent services coming in and things, we just thought it was a time for a refresh. So we've had a brand refresh, so this is what Navigo now looks like. New, softer than the old sharp logo, arrow on the left. So again, please give us your feedback on that. We know, I think it's brilliant. We did a huge amount of consultation that went into that. And so we're really pleased to announce that we've got a new brand and look forward to it developing slowly through the organisation. We're not going big bang. We're not spending tens of 50s of thousands changing all the signs everywhere. Just as it needs doing, we're going to do it. So you'll see both brands running alongside each other for a little while as we move over to the new brand. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Excellent review of the year. And it's not until you hear a presentation like that that you really understand how much work has gone on over the last 12 months. So thank you, Simon. I'd now like to welcome Anna, our Director of Corporate Services, who's going to present the financial review for the year.
Afternoon, everyone. So I'm Anna Morgan, Navigo's Director of Corporate Services, and I'm here today to present the highlight of the AGM for everyone, the accounts for 22-23. So what I'm going to cover in this section is just a look back at how we performed in 22-23, but also to look forward to the current financial year that we're in now and beyond there, and really think about the role we can all play in the journey that we're on. So just before we get into the numbers, a quick reminder of the Navigo group that we talk about in this presentation. So Navigo Health and Social Care Community Interest Company is the parent company within the group. We then have Nurtrio. So Nurtrio joined us back on the 31st of March 22. And they provide a range of social care and support services for individuals that are particularly vulnerable, so those with mental health problems, learning disabilities, older people, and those with complex needs. We then have the Gardner Hill Foundation, which is Navigo's chosen charity, and they are very much committed to enriching the lives of people with mental health problems. And then we have Navigo CAMS Care UK, which is the limited company we set up to deliver our therapeutic offer that is very much committed to the prevention and reduction of suicidality. So I think it's fair to say 22-23 was another challenging year, and we really operated in a very challenging environment again, and we had a few things to contend with. So our old friend COVID was still very much with us, so although all of the national restrictions had been removed, we still had to continue to manage our response to this across all of our services. And in addition to that, we started to encounter what we're referring to as the COVID injury, so really starting to see the aftermath and impact of the pandemic. And this is something that we've all had to start to adjust to, really understanding what that new norm looks like. But for our services, not only did they have to get used to the new norm, they've also had to deal with that increase in demand and acuity as a result of the pandemic. We've also got the cost of living crisis. So this is something that is impacting all of our personal lives. But as organisations, we're also being impacted by this. So we're seeing the increase in the cost of electricity, gas, fuel, increase on the percentage repayments on our loans. So it's something we're having to manage throughout the year. And then in 22-23, there was quite a significant change in the health and social care landscape that we operate within. So our previous commissioners, North East Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group, were replaced by Humber and North Yorkshire Integrated Care Board. So what this meant is we've had to spend a lot of time building relationships and continuing to raise Navigo's profile across Humber and North Yorkshire.
And we've had to do all of this while still continuing to deliver services. And for those of you that attend our membership board, you'll know that in 22-23 we had a really ambitious work plan. So that covered a huge amount of work that was happening all across the organisation. So it's an absolute credit to everyone that's been involved in delivering our services that we've continued to perform so well in such a challenging environment. So before we get into the year-end position and how we've performed, we'll just pick up a bit on income generation, so how we generated the income into the organisation. So we continue to hold our main contract for the provision of statutory adult mental health services in North East Lincolnshire. It'll be exciting next year when I present these accounts, because I'll be saying the statutory all-age mental health services, because obviously the Young Minds Matter team have joined the family at the beginning of this financial year. So our main core contract generates the majority of our income, but we've done other activities to enhance that income. And just an example of some of those activities include the opening of the Jane Lewington's fleet, so our new complex dementia unit. So that's created the opportunity for us to sell beds to other partners across the system. We also introduced extra beds at our Rahari and Fields Specialist Eating Disorder Service. So this was something that was actually requested by partners across the Humber and North Yorkshire, so we could offer beds to their complex service users with the eating disorder needs. And not forgetting our trading arms. So Grimsby Garden Centre, Respect and CAMS all generated a profit that we were able to reinvest back into services. But not just that, through their provision, it raised the profile of Navigo. We're able to share wider the ethos and culture of our organisation. Through the Garden Centre, we're able to create job opportunities and work placements for our service users. And it enabled us to continue on our mission to tackle the stigma associated with mental health. So our trading arms really contributed a lot in this year. And then not forgetting Nurtrio. So Nurtrio joined our family in this financial year, so their income is incorporated within the consolidated accounts that we're going through today. And then cost savings. So we've done income generation. We also did some work around cost savings. And this is a completely normal process that organisations do to look at each year, are there some efficiencies that we could drive throughout that year? So we set ourselves some targets. We set our operational teams a target of 140,000 and our corporate teams 125. So in this financial year, we delivered a savings plan of £265,000. And the majority of that was delivered through efficiencies, so things like working with Nurtrio on our rehab houses, streamlining our estates and how we use them, and relocating our NHS talking therapy services into Navigo House. And then not forgetting our capital programme. So we continued with our ambitious capital programme, which is where we make one-off investments to enhance our services. So we spent £158,000 on our IT refresh and making sure our IT equipment's up to date. £330,000 on our estate, so work to enhance our existing estate. So work at the site formerly known as Grimsby Grange and Manor, at the Garden Centre, and the work at Brocklesby Lodge to relocate our 136 suite. And we bought a vehicle. So, moving on to our accounts for 22-23. So these are available on our website if anyone wants to look at them in more detail, and there are some printed copies dotted about the AGM today, so feel free to have a look at them. But going back to the slides I've just talked through, it was a really challenging year, and we did really well and performed well and had an underlying surplus of £100,000. However, we did face some unexpected financial pressures in this year. So, as some of you may be aware, in May 23, a new pay award deal was reached for staff on an NHS Agenda for Change contract. And due to our social enterprise status, to date, we haven't received central funding to cover the cost of what was referred to as the non-consolidated payments, the COVID bonus you might have heard about, which related to 22-23. Now, we're not alone in this position. Other social enterprises and local authorities that have staff on Agenda for Change contracts are in the same position. And whilst we continue to work together to lobby against that, and we are hopeful that we may be able to resolve this position, our board met back in May to consider how we wanted to manage that position. And we unanimously agreed that we wanted to honour that payment for all our staff on the Agenda for Change contracts because it was so important to recognise all of the hard work you'd done during the pandemic. But this did result in a financial pressure of £1.5 million. But this is why it's been so important over the years that we've built up a healthy reserve within the organisation, because it's there to cover unexpected costs like this. And whilst it may impact in the future our ability to invest in growth within the organisation, we all absolutely agreed that our staff were the priority. We also made the decision in this financial year to do something called a revaluation of our assets. So what we did identify is we had some properties on our balance sheet that actually were overstated in their value. And that's because the value we had down was their purchase price plus their refurbishment price. But we actually spend a lot of money refurbishing our properties because we want them to be at high standard, but also where they need to be appropriate for mental health provision. So it's a lot more than it would be, say, for a commercial or a residential property. So we made the decision to revalue them. So that sees a reduction in our balance sheet of about 947,000. So it's not a cash reduction, but it impacts our balance sheet. But we were able to release some money that we had received from our commissioners to help with those refurbishment costs. So that helped to reduce that figure. So what does this mean for the year end then? So at the end of 22-23, our total income was £50.1 million, but it cost us nearly £52 million to deliver services. So that does mean we have reported a loss of 1.898 million. So this is only the second time in the organisation's history that we have reported a loss, but don't worry, it isn't quite as bad as it sounds. So when we look at an organisation's health, we look at what we own and what we owe. So when we look at this for Navigo at the end of 22-23, we had current assets of £17.5 million. So they're kind of liquid assets. That's money that we've got available to spend. So that's the equivalent of what you get in each month, plus any savings account, plus anything you might make by selling things on Vinted or eBay. And it was Kev that came up with that analogy, so thank you, Kev. And then you've got non-current assets. So these are things like properties, where your money's tied up in that asset. So we had a total of 23.7 million. But don't get too excited, because we owed some money as well. So current liabilities of 13.7 million. So these are things that we know we need to pay in the near future. So a bit like, you know, each month you need to pay a bit off your credit card. We know we need to pay these. But we've also got non-current liabilities. So these are things that we know we need to pay back, but over a much longer time period. So things like loans and mortgages. So that came to a total of 18.5 million. So when we take away what we owe from what we own, it gives us the reserves of 5.2 million. So our reserves are like a savings account. So this is the money that we have available to spend on things like unexpected pressures, like the pay award, or investments in the organisation to help with our growth. So it's not for things where it's an ongoing cost, but those one-off investments. And whilst the figure is less than what I presented last year, because we have had to use some of those reserves to the pay award, that is still a really healthy position that the organisation is in. So, despite us presenting a deficit or posting a deficit at the end of 22-23, the balance sheet is still very strong with a good asset base. So that's things like our buildings. They're our buildings, and it very much keeps us rooted in North East Lincolnshire. And we've also got a really strong cash position, and that's a really good indicator of the financial health of an organisation. So that's really good. Plus, we've had a clean bill of health from our auditors. So credit to Kev, Stuart, and the finance team. It's not all bad news. It's a really good position. And I just wanted to touch on, because I'm conscious in this presentation and the fact that we've posted a deficit, I also wanted to touch on the benefits of us being a KIC and to reflect upon that. And I actually wanted to connect it to the strategy that Simon has just put up on his slides and really think about 4 key factors. So in terms of quality, we continue to be absolutely committed to delivering the best possible care and services for our service users through innovation, through continuous improvement, very much working with our service users, our staff, and our membership. And continue to innovate. This is one of the reasons why we have such a positive national profile, is because we continue to push the boundaries of mental health provision. And we're very much keen to continue and work that way to kind of tackle the challenges we've got ahead. How many other mental health organisations do we know that have a garden centre that generates profit to reinvest in services, but also creates work opportunities for service users? And we want to do more of that to tackle the challenges ahead. And our people, our staff continue to be our biggest asset. And we are again committed to empowering you, our workforce, to continue to develop our services. And we are committed to ensuring that we have a culture that means we're an organisation that people want to come and work for. Then finally, partnerships. We have really strong partnerships, both in North East Lincolnshire and across Humber and North Yorkshire. Simon mentioned earlier, it's been great to have some of our North East Links Mental Health Sector Network colleagues here, and we're really excited to see what we can achieve and how we can tackle the challenges ahead through partnership working to improve the outcomes for the people of North East Lincolnshire. And then we cannot forget the partnerships that have been rooted through the organisation since it was established, so our membership, our service users and our staff. So to wrap it up then, so what's next? So we've already established a savings plan for 23-24, and we're on track with that savings plan, which is positive. We are going to continue to lobby for equal investment. We continue to push around the pay award position, and we remain hopeful that we might be able to resolve that situation. Delivery of our strategy. So this document reflects the exciting ambitions we all have for our services and the organisation in the coming years. And then finally, growing our way out of this by innovating and transforming. We are really lucky that we have a board that's absolutely committed to growing our way out of this position, not shrinking. And I'm really confident that if we all continue to work together, our staff, our service users, our membership and our partnership, we can tackle these challenges through innovation, through co-production and through partnership, because we are Navigo. Thanks, everyone. We're not doing questions, just in a bit. Just in a bit. Are
you a director?
I am, yes.
And two, how many years has Navigo been going before it changed to Navigo? How many years?
Was it 2011? So 12 years.
No, it's been more than 12 years.
One.
Before Navigo, the whole, in totality, how long has the organisation been going? When did it start?
2011. It was 2011, yeah, so 12 years.
No, more than 12 years.
Do you think? Okay.
So how many years in total?
I don't know.
I was going to say, if it's like 30 or so, we said 2 times you only had a deficit. That's very good.
I'll come down and have a chat with you. Let me come and sit with you. Okay.
Thank you, Anna. A really clear exposition of the in-year financial position as against our overall balance sheet. So thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the awards section of the afternoon, and I'd like to welcome on stage Jo Keane and Pam Callison, two of our elected non-executives, and they're going to be presenting the first 4 of the awards that will be presented this afternoon. So come on, Jo, come on, Pam. Jo will be with us shortly. She's just getting the headphones on, I hope.
Good afternoon. We come with lots of gifts. So we're here to present the awards. And the first award is for Peer Support Worker. So this award goes to somebody who has supported a peer on their pathway to recovery or wellness, sharing understanding, knowledge and kindness. And the nominees are... Oh, Pam, this is a bit awkward, this, isn't it? For those of you who don't know, Pam happens to be one of the nominees. And it is a little bit awkward because Pam is actually the winner of this award. There you go, love. It wasn't fixed. I promise you, it wasn't fixed. Well done to Pam. Next award is for Volunteer of the Year. And this award goes to a volunteer who supported somebody within a Navigo or Nurtrio service. And the nominees are... Okay, Pam.
And the winners are May Tees and Jen Lilly. These two previously provided care to their husbands who had a diagnosis of dementia. They are familiar faces within the CMHT who now designate their time twice a week to support the occupational therapy team to run group therapy sessions. They take the time to get to know the service users that they support, familiarising themselves with likes and dislikes. They both come to every group prepared, smiling, ready with positive stories to share. Their lived experience allows them to connect with service users and their families in a person-centred manner, enabling them to feel reassured, therefore more able to engage in interventions. The support they give goes above and beyond expectations from both service users and their families, providing compliments about their approach. They've been described as welcoming, relatable, and friendly faces to look forward to. They are a fundamental part of the team. Their dedication and support week in, week out is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Jen.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, ladies. Our next award is for Partner of the Year. This new award celebrates our voluntary, community and social enterprise partners and others that help us to deliver our services. And the nominees are?
And the winner is Kirsty Somervell. Having taken us on gentle walks around People's Park, given us information on folklores and other interesting facts about nature and healing properties. Then on returning, we've created explosions of scent to make shower gels, bath crystals and rollerballs. She has shared her knowledge and allowed us to use her aromatherapy oils to create our recipes. So it's thank you to Kirsty Somervell. Thanks,
Unfortunately, come on, Amanda, come up and collect this on behalf of Kirsty. Give a round of applause to Amanda, please. She's going to kill me. That was nice you volunteered. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Amanda. And moving on to our next award, this is for Community Individual of the Year. This award is for a staff member who does an amazing job day in, day out. And the list is endless.
And the winner is Michelle Blowers. All the support she was tirelessly given this year. Early in the year, I was a complete pain, needing support most days, even if just by phone. She dealt with me fairly and with total respect. She also supported my son when I needed to be admitted to the ward. She has gone above and beyond in her support, and with her guidance I have flourished and have had no further incidents with crisis. Thank you, you are a lifesaver. You are my mum's care coordinator and you've not only brilliantly supported my mum, you've made sure I am okay. You've helped me to understand mum's illness. So is there somebody that can collect on Michelle's behalf? She's not in.
A willing victim. Come on, Patty. Nicely volunteered, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe and Pam. They will be back.
The final award this afternoon is the Shine a Light Annie Darby Award. Earlier this year, we lost a very special colleague and a very dear friend, Annie Darby, OBE and Queen's Nurse. If the spirit of Navigo could be exemplified by a single person, it was exemplified by Annie. She was passionate about the care of the most vulnerable,
about doing the right thing, a true innovator in bringing in new ways to tackle problems, and absolutely fearless in the face of a barrier or in the face of opposition. We could not think of a better person after whom we could name the Shining Light Award. And it gives me great pleasure to invite her husband, Dr. Paul Darby, to present this year's Annie Darby Shining Light Award. Come on up, Paul.
Good afternoon, Navigo AGM. So I'm the lesser half. Try and find some glasses. So, yeah, Annie Darby, what a legend. She did so much, you know, for the community, here in Grimsby, nationally, and globally, actually. Sorely missed. She loved the ethos of Navigo, nearly as much as Simon. She had 10 years at Navigo, and she found it extremely satisfying and was extremely happy there. She was safeguard lead, tough job, but what she really liked was the projects and the innovation. So, I guess one thing that we miss at this year's AGM is her laugh. You know, very special. So the Shine a Light Award is a new award for a staff member, service user, or carer who has shown exceptional determination, love, kindness, or has just lifted someone's spirit who needed it. So the nominations, please. And the winner is Amy Flett. So just a few words about Amy. She is, as many of you know, the face and the smile of the cafe. Yeah. Always ready to talk to you, to talk about your problems if you have any. Fantastic. Amy epitomises what Navigo and Chooks is about. And she's a very deserved winner of the Annie Darby Shine a Light Award.
I appreciate everybody's support from Chooks and Navigo House. Just want to tell you.
Go on.
I'll tell you a little story. I started off a little girl wanting to go out with my friends and doing normal things, but I knew back then there was something about me that made me different, and now I know why. I've put it back into what I believe in, and that's healthy mind. And I think a healthy mind is healthy body, and just if you can make somebody's day, and I feel Annie Darby was just so caring and so lovely. She was here for the people. And in a way, she was like Princess Diana. And who could be any better than Princess Diana? So, yeah. So I came into services when I was 19. I remember Mike. I don't know your surname. I always get your surname wrong, but he's a lovely man. And, basically, tell me off if I'm talking too much. But I've got some lovely members on stage here. But basically, my idea is to run a few new businesses with the help of people like Jeanette. And basically, I didn't know I was poorly, and a lot of people will tell you that. They don't realise they're poorly until sometimes a nurse comes to see you and says you need to be admitted. And I've almost campaigned for years in my head about doing something like this, so it's like a dream come true for me. The family I've got are absolutely gorgeous. Amy's like family member.
You're amazing. It's your moment.
Can I bring my family on now? Can I bring my family on? And Joe. Yeah, and family in a minute. I want everybody. But Joe is absolutely what I would call absolutely magic, and she's very sensitive, and she's grounded. She's grounded, and that's what we need to see. We need to see people like Annie that. Well, I'll tell you another little story.
She's going to be here a while.
But yeah, I saw Suzanne Brown earlier, and I absolutely adore Suzanne Brown. And basically, I said to her, "You never gave me no." I said, "You told me the truth." She said, "Amy, if I told you the truth, that's because you were doing something that maybe was it a bit inappropriate." So I said, "As long as you tell the truth, you'll always be, how can I put it? You'll always be, what's the word? Anybody come up with a word?" Amazing, yeah. And I tell you what, Jen Cordy called me amazing the other week, and I think the world of her. And Amanda Ledbetter, if she could come on stage, I think the world of her. I love you all. Can I just say a bit more about Annie, and I will. I'm going to say a bit more about her. I'll tell you another little story. I am being true to myself. I can't remember what I was going to say now. I'm just going to say a few more things, and then I'll let you go. What I liked about Annie Darby, she never got nasty or mad. She treated service users like, and again, Stuart Harris always said this to me. You treat people like you treat your family, and that's how Simon is, and that's how Simon worked with Annie Darby so well. They were so best friends. And Annie Darby would say, "Hello, Mr. Beaton. How's it going in the morning?" And you might have had a bit of competition with Poldark. Can I bring my family onto the stage? Who wants to come first? Pam, do you want to come up? Or we run out of time. Don't matter if we haven't, it just means so much to me because I've suffered. All of them. Can we have some pictures, please?
Come on, Amy, bring it in.
Oh, there's Linda and Yeaton and Sophie and Dad.
We're going to be here forever.
Are they allowed to come up after this?
You can have whoever you want up, Amy. Who do you want?
Can I join you?
Come on, let's bring Paul in.
Of course you can.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Are my family allowed to come up or not?
We'll sort out a photo afterwards.
Oh, lovely.
I've got a couple more things to do and then we can sort it out.
I feel a bit guilty. I've got my family on the stage and I've got everybody else on stage.
We can do that in a second for you.
Lovely. One last person Richard Mellon. He does amazing things, absolutely amazing things. He got me well. And just before I go, my mum has been like an angel throughout the years. She's seen me at my worst and she's seen me at my best. And my dad, well, my dad's just dad. But my sister had a baby 6 weeks ago, and it's changed our lives around, it really has. But Mum and Dad, Mum, when I first... Shall I do it later, do you think? Oh, is that all right? And I'm going to say something about you too. Yeah, so Mum basically saw me when I was at my worst, and she basically got me back to the old Amy, because when I first came out of hospital, I had severe psychosis, but I was helped by the early intervention team, which was run by Amanda at the time, and Richard Mellon, and Jane, Jeanette, Vicky, Adam Cook, all of those people. And yeah, basically, how can I put it? Just want to say a few more things about you. Yeah, how can I put it? Me and Sophie planned to go on holiday, but it didn't happen. But one day we're going to go back to Norway, and Jane's been to Norway. So me and Jane met on those kind of interests, because we showed each other the photos, didn't we?
We did. We did. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you. And two more people. I'll leave it up. Two more people. Dad, Linda and Amanda. Dad is absolutely stunning. He used to I worked at Curry's when I was 16, and basically I did a temporary job at the weekend, and my dad, sometimes I'd go out on a night out, and the next day I'd end up as a fart. And basically, Dad was so kind, he'd almost be carrying me into work. And it was a long way, and it was icy. And I thought, I get OCD over stuff like that. So yeah, Dad never had much money growing up because Dad had his own problems, but he's worked through them. And Kyle's amazing. Kyle's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thanks ever so much, Jane.
And more just about Amanda. I'll come back later.
Thank you so much, Amy. A fantastic winner of the first Shining Light Annie Darby Award. I'm now going to invite Joe and Pam back onto the stage to actually announce the winner of the Display Board Award. So have we got Joe and Pam?
How do you follow that? I just simply
Can't do it. Well done to Amy. That's the best speech I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Right then, what it's all about, this is the only reason everyone rocks up, I think, is to see who's got the best display stand. So here is the shield. This one isn't pre-loaded, we don't know who's won. It was really, really difficult for the community reps to judge, but we do have a winner, and the winner is?
Early intervention in psychosis.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you. Here we go. Clive's going to want a photo of you. Who wants to take it? It's not been in... We're going to have to whip it back off you. Thank you, well done. Thank you.
Right, we're nearly there.
We're nearly announcing the winner of the project of the year, but we've got one little job to do whilst they're bringing on the tubes, I think, onto the stage for the big reveal, and that is just to announce the winner of the Gardner Hill raffle. So the winning ticket is number 83, and that's the fruit basket, and the second prize is number 48, and those are garden centre vouchers. So if you can make your way to the Gardner Hill stand in the front foyer, they'll have the prizes for you. Thank you. So let's have a look at the tubes. You've all been busy voting all day. We know that from the number of tokens that are in the 3 tubes. We ought to have a drum roll, didn't we, at this? I hope they've done their moving and handling training. Who's got the keys? Kelly, would you like to do the honours? And the winner is Rise. So, come on up. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I was waiting. There we go. Thank you very much. A very clear winner from the voting today. So we're now at the point, it's closing comments from me. I'd just like to close this year's AGM by thanking each and every person for the work that you've done over the last 12 months, for the continued commitment to the people who use our services, to your colleagues and to our local community. The last 12 months haven't been easy. As we've heard today, mental health services are seeing increased demand and increased complexity of need. Not easy to address when funding is limited, costs are increasing, and it can be difficult to recruit. You can therefore be even more proud of keeping true to the Navigo ethos in the face of these challenges. Your respect for the people who use our services, your respect and support for each other, and your willingness to try new approaches aimed at maintaining the quality of care that we strive to deliver. We have successfully welcomed new members into the Navigo family over the last 18 months. Firstly, our colleagues in Nurtrio, and now our colleagues within CAMS. I would like to thank our staff and community reps for the vital role that they play in making sure that the voice of our staff, our service users and carers is centre stage in every single thing that we do. And I would also like to thank the many volunteers who selflessly give their time in support of our service users. I couldn't be more proud of our broad Navigo family, nor more humble to be your chairman. Finally, some thank yous from the board. Firstly, to you for attending. You are what makes the AGM by coming here today and celebrating what is Navigo. Thank you to all of our presenters, our panel members, interviewees and interviewers, with a special thank you to Katie Thistleton and to Pippa and Joe. Thank you to Di and her team in Chooks for keeping us all fantastically fed and watered throughout the day. As per usual, a brilliant job. Thank you to the Corporate Affairs and Comms team for actually organising today. I hope everyone has enjoyed their day, and we hope to see you all here next year, and have a very safe journey home. Thank you.